Chapter 463. Chun-Ong used the Nine Bends Yellow River Formation to draw upon the power of the Eye of the Sea, sinking Air Island into the Eye of the Sea. Just like Purple Cloud Palace, it sank into the Earth's crust. Meanwhile, Master Lianshan suppressed Air Island, preventing it from being destroyed by the Eye of the Sea. Without this fire vein, the power of creation of the Eye of the Sea would be reduced by at least half. The two worked together to create a blessed land under the sea. Using water to fight fire, not only did they calm the sea of fire on Air Island, they also warmed the ocean currents within thousands of miles. Because of the Eye of the Sea, the seawater here was continuously sent to various places in the North Pole Sea, forming a warm and comfortable current. This also prevented the evil of the sea of fish and beasts in the sea from dying, because the seawater was kept in the fire vein for a long time and boiled. The rogue cultivators nearby saw Air Island sinking to the bottom of the sea, then looked at Chun-Ong, who was floating on the surface of the sea with fear in their eyes. The Luopa Cave's lewd silkworm, Wang Gang, and the group of rogue cultivators who had died all reminded them of the danger of Chun-Ong. Thus, these rogue cultivators scattered like birds and beasts, far away from this great calamity. Chun-Ong shrunk the golden ship of creation to about 30 feet in size, then landed on the ship and escaped to the bottom of the sea. Endless cold seawater gushed out from the Eye of the Sea. Under the dark surface of the sea, there was only a little bit of dark red like the glow of ashes. Chun-Ong saw that it was the red glow of Air Island's volcano at the bottom of the sea. As the North Pole Sea surged, it was in imminent danger. Its color grew dimmer and dimmer, as if it was about to be extinguished. As Chun-Ong used the Nine Bends Yellow River Formation to restrain the seawater, he urged the golden ship of creation to transform into a golden rainbow and escape to Air Island. At this moment, most of the island was drenched by the cold current, leaving only a little bit of warmth. Master Lianshan used his earth fire to resist the cold current of the North Pole Sea. Seeing Chun-Ong, he nodded and sighed. Because I wanted to eliminate the fire calamity of Air Island, I have already leaked poisonous underground fire several times. Now, the fire of Air Island's volcano is not enough to resist the cold current, so I need your help. Chun-Ong smiled faintly and said, "That's not a problem. Even when the Moon-Child Island's volcano was at its peak, it couldn't withstand the erosion of the North Pole seawater for 10,000 years. I still need to use the golden ship of creation to penetrate the underground fire vein and trigger the earth-lung poison fire to solve this once and for all. With how strong the geocentric fire is, it won't be extinguished by the North Pole's seawater for tens of thousands of years." Then he called the Ruan siblings over and said, "I'm going to drill through the Earth's veins and activate the underground fire. Star Lianshan to protect the Sea of Pole Sea area, Dragon Yuli Sea of Pole Dragon. You should also experience the might of the subterranean extreme fire so that you don't revere the heavenly Tao in the future and become arrogant." The brother and sister of the Ruan family were naturally willing. Chun-Ong sent them into the belly of the golden ship. He stood at the bow of the ship and let out a long whistle. He dove into the fire cave of the Moon-Child Island. The golden ship separated the underground lava and traveled down along the fire vein. The fire wings of Xian-En poison fire were boiling in the fire sea. The fire wings were white and red, and they seemed to be able to melt the golden ship. However, the fire wings of Sun God on the golden ship of creation opened and changed. The fire wings of Sun grew 1,000 feet and swallowed the fire that was threatening the golden ship. Most of the fire was turned into red talismans to refine the fire wings of Sun God. A small part of the fire was turned into power to double the speed of the fire wings of Sun God. In the blink of an eye, the golden ship of creation went into the depth of the earth vein. The fire vein was cut off at this point. Only a streak of earth fire in evil chi separated the earth lung and the 10,000 feet fire vein, protecting the world above the earth's crust from being invaded by the Tai fire. Chun-Ong wanted to create a path through this and guide the power of the earth lung dark poison fire to the surface. Only the power of heaven and earth could warm the 10,000 miles of ocean in the North Pole and create a blessed land in the middle of the extreme pole. This earth fire Chi is born with the ability to restrain the earth lung grand fire. Don't be fooled by its appearance as a red mist. Inside, it can melt metal and corrode fire. No matter how powerful a restriction magic treasure is, once it is enveloped by it, it can melt into molten iron. Chun-Ong explained to the brother and sister of the Yuan family. Besides, it is responsible for resisting the earth fire and protecting the earth's crust. No matter how powerful your supernatural power is, you can't touch it. Chun-Ong originally thought that the fire vein would be protected by the earth fire copper vein, the Zhurong blood sea, or the Baifeng divine jade mountain. In that case, he could only use the yin-yang magnetic thunder cannon on the golden ship of creation to open a passage and then use magic treasure to suppress it. Now it seemed that it was not necessary. Chun-Ong let the brother and sister of the Yuan family temporarily take charge of the golden ship of creation for him. He shouted in a low voice and faintly connected with the formation of 9 bends Yellow River thousands of miles above his head. A white rainbow flew out from his dantian. This white rainbow was composed of countless talismans, which was formed by the essence of Chun-Ang's Milky Way Dharma power. Because water and fire restrained each other, Chun-Ong could only show a part of the Milky Way Dharma power that was beyond the nature of water. This white rainbow flew out and immediately attracted the earth fire, evil poison fire. When the two sides came into contact, not only did it not cause a violent change, but it merged with it. Countless small talismans stuck to it like young swallows flying to the forest. They absorbed the earth fire red mist and transformed it into a formation map. They entered the earth fire evil poison fire and began to absorb the evil chi. Countless red talismans were spewed out and refined into the formation map, thickening the essence of the formation map. Chun-Ong silently operated his primordial spirit and sat at the bow of the ship. He tried his best to understand the essence of the earth fire evil poison fire and deduced the formation map. This was not like the formation of 9 bends Yellow River, which had a deep accumulation of the way of true water. Whether it was the way of true fire or the evil chi of earth, Chun-Ong could only be considered to have a slight understanding of them. He was not proficient in them, so there were many difficulties in deducing them. The gradually expanding formation map was also repelled by the earth fire evil poison fire a few times. The talismans that formed the prohibition were scattered and on the verge of collapse. Fortunately, Chun-Ong was not alone. His primordial spirit was constantly communicating with Master Lianshan to control the formation of 9 bends Yellow River. Master Lianshan was an expert in the art of fire and was familiar with the nature of fire. He taught Chun-Ong everything he knew. With his experience, not only did the formation of 9 bends Yellow River gain a few more changes, but the formation map that was constantly growing in the evil poison fire also gradually stabilized and continued to evolve exquisitely. After 3 months, the formation map had already devoured 80% of the earth fire evil poison fire. It faintly formed a blurry shadow. Chun-Ong also used the boundless nature of fire to refine a few transcendent treasures and primordial embryos. He also refined the lump of metal he prepared for Qing a few times and refined it into 81 earth fire prime needles. These needles were specialized in breaking prohibitions and the evil poison fire, as well as the true chi of the transcendent treasures that cultivators used to protect themselves. There were still dozens of days until the Dragon Boat Festival. Chun-Ong transformed the earth fire prime needles into a long rainbow and flew away. He also took the opportunity to tell Qing that he was trapped in the earth fire and could not help her. On the day of the Dragon Boat Festival, Chun-Ong knew that Qing tribulation had begun. With the help of his earth fire prime needles, Qing was trapped in the prohibition. She still had to endure 10 more years of tempering before she would have the chance to escape. At this time, the qi of heaven and earth was of the utmost yang. It swept away the evil and poisonous things. Many evil poison fire and bad luck temporarily lay dormant. Chapter 464. The boundless Taihua carried the power to burn the world as it rushed up along the underground fire vein. Molten lava wrapped around the precious minerals underground. The surging rich mineral veins were about to block the fire cave. When the Taihua rushed up to the surface, the passage would be blocked, and the force would not be able to pour out. The North Pole would probably collapse, and the unprecedented earthquake would destroy billions of lives. In the face of such terror, Chen Eng's expression was calm. He activated the golden ship under him, and the 2 fire wings of the sun god flapped hard. The golden ship of fate suddenly returned to its size of 1,000 feet, flying in front of the Taihua. The accumulated gold and iron, as well as the treasures of heaven and earth, were all swallowed by the golden ship. The impurities in the fire vein that couldn't be melted were crushed by the golden ship he was driving. From time to time, the divine thunder cannon would explode and expand the fire vein by several times, reducing the tremendous impact force to some extent. When it reached the entrance of the Moon Island's fire cave, the golden ship turned into a beam of light and stopped. Under the activation of Chen Eng's mana, it suddenly pressed down. The entire Moon Island was melted into a ball of boiling lava. The Yellow River formation of 9 bends unleashed 90% of its power, gathering the qi of water essence from the North Pole and the Xianming true water that had been refined for months. The coldness of the Xianming true water and the burning of the underground Taihua were guarded by the golden ship of fate. Under the full control of Chen Ong and Master Lianshan, the water and fire complemented each other and turned into a qi of vitality that could nourish all lives. It slowly spread out. The Yellow River formation of 9 bends formlessly intercepted it. The entire formation changed and expanded several times, enveloping 1,000 miles of the sea. The ancient cold air of the North Pole gathered from all directions and was refined by the Yellow River formation of 9 bends, turning into Xianming true water. A portion was used to fuel the Taihua, and another portion was used to perfect the formation. After the Tianyi true water, one of the 7 innate true waters was perfected, doubling the formation's power. On the other hand, the Moon Island at the bottom of the sea had borrowed a large amount of lava that was brought up from underground by the Taihua, causing its volume to increase by 10 times. Its entire body had even borrowed the power of fire and water to temper itself into a huge piece of warm jade. It was crystal clear, warm and adorable like the fat of sheep. The warm jade at the very center had all turned into Baifeng fire jade. It could be said to be another 9 earth spirit abode that was not inferior to the purple cloud palace. Chernong had gained a lot this time. Not only had he accepted the overseas celestial abode that even Lingqiao and Mount Amei coveted, but he had also used his good deeds of opening up the spiritual land in the North Pole and creating countless living beings to extend his own fate energy. He had also united the 4 seas and opened up another branch of the overseas world. He had cleverly transferred all these to Great Master Lianshan. Previously, when he was refining the golden ship of Moon Island, the countless metals and materials that he had excavated from the sea were erased by the heavenly axiom. Taking advantage of the opportunity of the rising lava from underground, his golden ship of creation had collected countless precious materials, including real gold and divine gold. One must know that the mineral concentration in the core of Mount Shu was a few hundred times higher than the surface of the earth. It had not been excavated by the cultivators of the world yet. At this moment, all the metals and minerals that Chen Ong had were enough to supply the needs of several large sects for 10,000 years. Moreover, he did not have any innate karma, so he did not owe the heaven and earth. This was the embodiment of Chen Eng's Tao of creation. It had deeply illustrated the Tao of heaven and earth of the creation of the heavenly axiom, I will benefit from it. Speaking of which, Chen Ang's mining of minerals and smelting metals was a few 100,000 times better than other cultivators. However, the unorthodox cultivators would be entangled with karma whenever they stole a little from the heaven and earth. In the future, they would face retribution. Chen Ong was very powerful, but his fate energy was long, and his good fortune would benefit the 9 generations. Chen Ong had collected treasures of heaven and earth for a total of 3 times. The first time was when he transformed into a crane and refined countless elixirs and miraculous medicines. However, he only benefited a little from it. The second time was when he sacrificed at the Purple Cloud Palace to cultivate the Yellow River of 9 Tunes formation and mined minerals. However, he integrated them into the Sea Eye of creation and did not get involved in karma. This time, he even took advantage of the opening of the Sea Eye to fish out as much as he could, which increased his fate energy. The wonders of creation could be seen clearly. After a few days, the newly formed Moon Island Blessed Land had stabilized. As long as there was no disruption from external forces, the arrangement of water and fire complementing each other, and thousands of miles of good fortune would stabilize in a few decades. By then, no one would be able to detonate the power of the Sea Eye's fire vein. Only then did Master Lianshan's remnant soul slowly emerge from the heart of the Moon Island's Jade Mountain. Compared to the power that suppressed the earth fire previously, Master Lianshan's soul was ethereal, as if it could be blown away by the wind. However, in Chen Ang's eyes, his condition was unprecedentedly good. Previously, his primordial spirit was strong but lethargic, as if the sun had set in the west. Now it was weak and illusory, but full of vigor like a newly sprouted seedling. Master Lianshan cupped his hands and said, "Thank you, Chen Daoyu, for saving me. Now I no longer need to reincarnate. After cultivating for 300 years, my primordial spirit will be able to recover to its former state. It might even go one step further and become a divine immortal." Chen Ong knew that he had more to say, so he calmly returned the greeting. As expected, Master Lianshan sighed and said, "But you schemed against me again. You transferred the fate of the Purple Cloud Palace to me. Amei and I are of the same breath. With this, the Purple Cloud Palace will definitely return to my hands after 300 years. Seizing the good fate of the younger generation really makes me feel ashamed." Chen Ong smiled and said, "Fellow Taoist, why are you ashamed? This is a good thing for both Amei and you. Now, with the fortune of the 4 seas and the protection of the Purple Cloud Palace, there is a possibility that the great wish that you made in the past can be realized. Opening another branch of Amei overseas and enlightening the unorthodox sects will be the right result. Compared to the previous plan of the Amei Mansion, it will be more able to develop the orthodoxy and prosper Amei. But this was originally your fate. It should have been you, Chen Daoyu, who established the orthodoxy of the 4 seas. After ascending from Amei, you should have established another leader of the righteous path. Now, with me blocking the disaster, you can be free and unfettered, while I have to train in the human world for 1,000 years to continue the orthodoxy of Amei," Master Lianshan said with a bitter smile. Chen Ong pretended not to hear the meaning in Lianshan's words. He laughed and said, "As the leader of Amei for 1,000 years, how can you retreat just because of one day? The orthodoxy of heaven and earth, and the fate of the righteous path, still need to be borne by you. I am just a free and unfettered person. How can I bear such a heavy responsibility? I have a poem here for you, Lianshan and fellow Amei friends, to benefit the human world. The heavenly Tao has decreed that you can also be transferred to me. I am convinced. Go and lie dormant for 300 years, wait for the day after tomorrow to face the disaster of the conflict between heaven and man." Master Lianshan interrupted Chen Ong helplessly. He went into the depths of Yuer Island and opened up a cave to cultivate. Chen Ong shook his head and smiled. He knew that Master Lianshan was angry because he had been schemed against. However, such emotions were no longer able to deceive the vital spirit of cultivators of their level. After his anger subsided, he still had to owe Chen Ong a favor. After all, Chen Ong had given him this opportunity, which also gave Lianshan the possibility of realizing his great wish in the past. There was no need for him to painstakingly leave behind countless treasures, secret treasures, and tomes of heaven to transfer karma. He called the Ruan siblings over and said, "Now that your island is hidden deep in the eye of the sea, although it can be illuminated by the sun and moon, it is still barren. I have left behind a portion of the spiritual herbs and rare treasures in the Purple Cloud Palace. You can cultivate them carefully and decorate this jade island. Although the entire body of jade is not ugly, I love plants and flowers the most, so it will be good to decorate it in a unique way. There is the suppression of the Earth Fiend Heavenly Gate 3,000 miles underground here, and I have also left behind the Yellow River of 9 Bends formation to protect it. With the two formations linked together, it is extremely safe and no one can sneak in. I can rest assured that you can cultivate in seclusion here. It is just that when I open the mansion, although I have killed many of the unorthodox schools to establish my might, the calamity has not ended yet. When you are transplanting spiritual herbs and rare plants in the nearby sea, there will be many twists and turns, and you will need treasures to protect yourself." Chen Ong pointed with his right finger, and 2 rays of light, one blue and one purple, entered the hands of the siblings. One turned into a pair of crystal-like scissors, and the other turned into a flying awl. He said, "This sea-splitting scissors and sea-breaking awl shall be bestowed to you to protect yourselves." When the two of them saw it, they could feel the power contained in it. It looked cute and they liked it very much. In the end, Chen Ong instructed, because the lava of the underground fire vein is constantly replenished, the surrounding earth veins are constantly being enriched, and there are countless mineral veins and rare treasures being born. Our Ur island is endlessly lucky, and we can use them to refine treasures. It is the heaven and earth's reward for me. As long as you do not overharvest and cut off the mineral veins, you can take as much as you want. Choose one of the few flying swords recorded in the sword refining method that I have left for you, and consider it as a lesson for you." He then waved his sleeves and said, "Go! I still have things to do, and I will leave in a month." He then ignored the two of them and turned into a long rainbow, merging with the Yellow River of 9 Bends formation. He borrowed the power of the formation to refine the Xian Ming real water and cultivate the celestial river mana. After this encounter, there was still some Xian Ming real water left in the formation, and with the North Pole's cold air constantly replenishing it, Chen Ong only took a month to cultivate the celestial river mana of the Xian Ming real water to a small success. The mana turned into a glacier river that could freeze the heaven and earth, and he left a part of the Yellow River of 9 Bends formation to suppress it. He then sat on the golden ship, triggered the heavenly star shifting, and fled to the East Sea. Chapter 465. The Heavenly Star Escape Technique used the eternally unchanging stars that hung between the two worlds as a guide, allowing one to travel thousands of miles in an instant. It was the first escape technique that Chen Ong had comprehended after comprehending the Milky Way star sea. It was not much slower than the Buddhist heart escape technique or the mystic door light escape technique, but it used the stars to determine one's position. It was a little more rigid and could only be used to travel, not to fight and pursue enemies. However, this escape technique had an advantage that no other technique had. If one had a flying magic treasure that could withstand the huge pressure of the immemorial stars suppressing the void, one could break through the layer of astral wind and travel between the stars beyond the heavens. This was a mystery that no matter how high one's heart escape technique was, it was not possible. Chen Ong had forged the magnetic golden ship of good fortune for this reason. With the golden ship, He could travel a distance that would take ordinary cultivators 100 years to fly on their swords and travel between the heavens. Among the 7 types of true waters there were 3 types: the Milky Way weak water, the first Yuan heavy water, and the time light true water, that were abundant in the stars beyond the heavens. Therefore, this trip was a must for Chen. The trip to the stars beyond the heavens was a plan for the future. At present, the golden ship sailed on the East Sea, sometimes diving underwater and sometimes sailing on the sea. The ship was not disturbed by the wind and rain, and no matter how strong the waves were, they could not get within 3 feet of the golden ship. Not only was the journey extremely fast, but they could also enjoy the magnificent scenery of the sea, which was more carefree than flying on their swords. Shushan was millions of times the size of Earth, and there were even more people in the sea. Countless small islands were scattered across the ocean, and there were many islands larger than Earth's Greenland. Many of them had formed their own continents, but they were not as prosperous as the divine Central Plains. These were the sea countries that the great Ming people talked about. In Jinling City, Chen had heard that there were Yanlong, Xiao, Baimin, Heiqi, Niuli, and many others. Each sea country occupied one or several islands and had many products that the Central Plains did not have. They were the overseas barbarians that the people of the Central Plains called overseas and paid tribute to the great Ming dynasty every year. The sea area that Chen had been to before was occupied by many sea beasts and flood dragons. There were also many storms and huge waves. Chen had seen huge waves that were dozens of feet high. It couldn't do anything to the golden ship of fate, but if an ordinary ship went there, it would be torn into pieces by the waves. There were also poisonous dragons and evil flood dragons, giant kuan and sea loaches. If an ordinary sea country were to establish a country there, the entire population of the country would be devoured by these evil beasts in a few years. Therefore, the population was sparse. Even if there were 1 or 2 of them, they were also protected by the overseas loose immortals. They lived around the immortal islands where the loose immortals lived and depended on the cultivators. Only places where the sea beasts and poisonous dragons were eliminated by the ocean currents could have the possibility of survival for a system like the sea country. There were many merchant ships here, and the sails were like the clouds. Fleets of ships came and went from all over the world. There were also many families and nobles from the Central Plains who came here to occupy a few big islands and establish their own businesses. The golden ship that Chen was riding on was rather eye-catching. Fortunately, the traveling merchants here were experienced and knowledgeable. Some of them even domesticated huge sea beasts to pull the ship. Others only saw Chen ship as something that looked like it was pasted with a layer of copper foil. They didn't think that it was a big ship made of metal. Moreover, Chen had the intention to keep a low profile. After withdrawing the golden light of the golden ship, it looked a little dim. It didn't look as bright as before, as if it was cast by the sun. As Chen slowed down the speed of the ship, a small boat approached from the channel. Someone on the boat shouted, "Is the owner here? What specialties do you have on this ship? Our Fuhai Merchant Union has been in this sea area for dozens of years and has a good reputation. We also have many special products of the sea country. You can take a look." Seeing that Chen didn't answer, the person asked again in several languages. These sea merchants are smart. There are even people who took the initiative to come here to inquire. It seems that the competition here is intense, and the business here is much more prosperous than the great Ming dynasty. Hearing that the person spoke with a Minnan accent, he thought, "He's also a citizen of the great Ming dynasty? If I'm in the South China Sea, will I hear a Chaosan accent?" Wanting to take a look at the situation of the citizens of the great Ming dynasty, Chen pointed and a rope was released from the golden ship. The person knew what he meant. Although it was strange that no one came to greet him, this was the most important part of the trade route. No pirates dared to do business here. Therefore, he was very reassured and climbed onto the bow of the ship. The person was a dark and skinny little man. When he came up, he only saw Chen Ong alone. His feet didn't seem to be stepping on copper foil, so he was secretly shocked. The person cupped his hands and chuckled. "Pardon me for disturbing you. May I ask what goods have you brought since this is your first time here? Our Fuhai Merchant Union is the #1 merchant union here. We have goods from all over the world. Great Ming Dynasty's silk, tea leaves, rhubarb, porcelain, fine iron, hay cheese, gold, silver, treasured sabers, spices and pearls from the South China Sea. No matter what you want, we can provide it." Chen Ong frowned and said, "I haven't introduced myself. How do you know that this is my first time here?" The person smiled and didn't look proud. Instead, he answered naturally, "Our Fuhai Merchant Union has been here for dozens of years. I remember all the merchants and ships that have come and gone, but there isn't a single distinguished customer here." Chen Ong counted the number of people he had seen along the way and couldn't help but praise. There are probably tens of thousands of merchant ships that come and go here every year. Who knows how many in the past few decades. It's really amazing that your merchant union has a talent like you. The person still said calmly, "If it wasn't for this, my owner wouldn't have been able to take root here for dozens of years and chase away many of the merchant unions here. Only we, the people of the Great Ming Dynasty, have this kind of background. The other sea countries are like beasts in human clothing. They drink blood and eat fur. I'm afraid that they haven't turned into humans for a long time and don't have proper etiquette. If you do business with them, it would really be a disgrace to your identity." He said this with confidence, and his tone sounded like it was only right and proper. Chen Ong pondered for a moment and said slowly, "But I'm here to do business with the Great Ming Dynasty's Merchant Union. This place is very close to the Great Ming Dynasty's territory. I've already come here for tens of thousands of miles of sea. Why would I mind this little bit of distance?" When the person heard tens of thousands of miles of sea, his right eyelid twitched and knew that he had caught a big fish. He immediately shouted, "Do you have any letters of credence from the overseas countries?" Chen Ong pretended to frown and said, "Why do you need a letter of credence?" The person chuckled and said proudly, "Honored guest doesn't know that the Great Ming Dynasty has closed its country and doesn't accept foreign merchants. Unless the Great Ming Dynasty has a letter of credence from the various countries saying that they are coming to pay tribute, the imperial court will not reward you. As for the merchant union, they only do business with the Great Ming's vassal states and their profits are very heavy. I'm afraid it will be difficult for honored guests to go there. With my wealth, it won't be difficult to bribe the Great Ming's vassal states and sneak in. The merchant union's profits are very heavy. If you add another layer, wouldn't it be stupid for me to follow?" Chen Ong asked in reply. The person laughed and said calmly, "Honored guest may not know, but our merchant union is very strong and has opened up the joints of the imperial court. We have the title of Jeune Ma Country. I'm not talented, but I'm a minister of Jeune Ma Country. Our president is the king of Jeune Ma Country and can pay tribute twice a year. It's much cheaper than the merchant union. Honored guest, doing business with us is better than doing business with the Great Ming Dynasty." Chen Ong sneered in his heart and thought, "You're going to pay tribute? I'm afraid it's more like smuggling. No wonder the Great Ming's overseas trade is so prosperous, but the imperial court's treasury is empty. As a result, the Northwest bandits couldn't be pacified and the Northeast bandits couldn't resist. This Fuhai Merchant Union is very strong. I'm afraid the entire Jiangnan is in cahoots with them, and the rich and powerful families have earned a lot. When the Tartars invade south, these idiots will destroy their families and families." Thinking of this, the good impression he had disappeared. He clapped his hands and the door of the pavilion behind him opened. Countless coral jewels, hawksbill pearls, exotic flowers and herbs, even the skin of sea beasts, the fragrance of ambergris, fine iron, gold and jade filled the entire pavilion. There were cat's-eye gems the size of baskets, thumb-sized sea beads, and 9 feet tall red corals. The person's eyeballs were about to sink in. The person was so excited that his whole body was trembling, almost going crazy. These were all harvests from Chin Ang's Purple Cloud Palace, Moon Island, and even the sea voyage. They were used to decorate the Immortal's Cave. To Chernong, they were like dung. He moved some from the golden ship of fortune and piled them here, tempting the person. Almost as if he was robbing, the person stuffed an exquisite booklet into Chen Ang's arms and said, "These are the goods of our merchant union. Is there anything that you like?" Chen Ang flipped through it and sneered, "These things can be used to fool ordinary people. I'm so rich that I can rival a country, so why would I care about them? If you can't take out anything better, I'll let this matter go." The person's head was covered in cold sweat. His previous calmness was completely gone. There was only one thought in his mind, to make this rich customer stay. "Is there anything that you like? Even if our merchant union doesn't have it now, we can send it to you within a month. The goods here are all used to do business with the barbarians. It's a bit rude to use them to receive a guest. But we are powerful in Middle-earth, so we can find anything. I admire the culture of Middle-earth. Northern Song Dynasty's Ru Kiln, Ding Kiln's official porcelain, famous calligraphies and paintings, ancient Shang and Zhou bronze wares, Han bronze wares, Tang gold and silver wares. Other than that, I don't like any silk, tea, or porcelain you make yourself." Chen Ong pretended to be extravagant, and his words were very magnanimous. The person calculated in his heart, these things are all limited. No matter how powerful the merchant union is, it can't earn 1/10 of the treasures in his warehouse. I have to think of a way to get more. He then asked, "Since you admire the culture of Middle-earth, why don't you buy a group of people from Middle-earth to serve you? How can foreign countries compare to the literate beauties of Middle-earth?" Chen Ong said loudly, "You dare to sell people?" He then waved his hand and said, "I've heard of the moral culture of Middle-earth. How can there be such shameless behavior?" "Shut up." The dark and skinny merchant was stunned. "And you're a Confucian gentleman." He quickly changed his words. "How is this a business? We're just hiring people to serve us. We also have all kinds of exotic treasures from overseas, spices from Sindhu and Samboja. Do you have Yuling?" Chen Ong interrupted him and asked. "The Merfolk Sea Nation has always been closed off, and we don't have many in stock." The person thought for a moment and his eyes suddenly lit up. He thought, "Isn't it better to sell exotic treasures than to sell gambling? If I can pique the interest of this rich guest, wouldn't it be easy to get as many treasures as I want?" There was indeed a rare commodity in his information. He quickly said, "Do you know that this year, the king of the Merfolk Great Cheong Sea Nation is holding a grand son-in-law selection ceremony to welcome countless distinguished guests from the sea? Not only will there be countless exotic treasures and products of the Merfolk to sell, but you can also win the hearts of the Merfolk princesses and become the son-in-law of the king of the Merfolk Sea Nation. I happen to have an invitation to this ceremony." Chapter 466. The capital of the Decheong Sea Kingdom was located in a bay surrounded by countless rocks and reef. The wind and waves here were very strong, and the reef split the waves, creating countless undercurrents and whirlpools. There were also hidden reefs, and the big and small waterways were interconnected, making it difficult for people who were not mermaids to travel. Sea snakes, dragon whales, walruses, and other evil beasts lived here, making it a nightmare for ships. Although the Merfolk could hide in the deep sea and were even more secretive, the Merfolk just happened to be amphibious. Just like seals and walruses, they liked to frolic on the reef. Moreover, the deep-sea poisonous dragons devoured the merfolk's people. Only in this kind of complicated and narrow waterway could they better protect themselves. The previous monarch also spent a lot of effort to find such a place. Chen Ong rowed the golden ship of fate and came to the front of the barren reef. He saw that there was a slightly flat area in the northwest corner that was already open to merchant. Many merchant ships were docked there, occupying the barren reef and building pavilions to sell their goods to the passing ship. Chen Ong did not care about this, and only activated the talisman that he had left for his disciple. Not long after, a sea loach swam out of the reef waterway and stopped in front of him. Third Princess Ling Sha came out from the belly of the sea loach, and when she saw Chen Ong, she said happily, "Master, you have returned from the Moon Island. I am sorry that I could not welcome you. I have ordered people to prepare a banquet in the courtyard to welcome you." Many of the third princess's arrogant habits had not been washed away. If it was not for the fact that Chen Ong saw that she had rich Gui water essential qi and knew how to work hard, he would have already scolded her. Cultivators had the most time, but also the most urgent. If they indulged themselves and enjoyed themselves, they would naturally have 10 times the time of ordinary people to enjoy themselves. If they were to seek enlightenment, they would quietly cultivate every day, and their time would be even more urgent than ordinary people. How would they have the time to attend the banquet? Did they really think that the 500-year tribulation of the immortals was a small matter? After thinking about this, Chen Ong let her come up. Princess Ling Sha wanted to open the way for him, but she did not expect the golden ship to turn into a beam of light and go straight to her palace after making many turns in the waterway. The speed of the ship was extremely fast. In just a blink of an eye, it had stopped in the middle of the courtyard. When the maids and guards from all directions saw it, they all surrounded it. Princess Lingsha could only stand on the boat and berate them a few times before respectfully inviting Chen Ong in. She was just a princess of the Sea Nation, but she already had the grandeur of a great Ming marquis on land. She had a pearl palace that was luxurious and luxurious. Even the emperor of the great Ming dynasty would not dare to build such a thing in his harem. However, the emperor of the great Ming was very poor. Most likely Emperor Chongzhen was not even willing to eat right now, so there was no point in comparing them. Chen Ong glanced around and sneered. "Your pearl palace is too simple and crude, it's really not worthy of my disciple's identity. Let me put on some makeup for you." After saying that, countless gold, jade, pearls, corals, and gems flew out of his sleeves. They were 100 times more luxurious than before. They piled up in the palace as if they were free. Those who saw it were shocked to the core and their minds swayed. After finishing, he said to Princess Lingsha, "Your master has not seen your good friend and sister yet. Go and invite them over." He walked into the Pearl Palace first and sat on the guest seat on the left. With a wave of his right sleeve, countless water droplets fell to the ground and broke into pieces. The water droplets then turned into fairy guards that looked like real people, creating the grandeur of a celestial palace. At first, Princess Lingsha was in a daze, afraid that Chen Ong would act up. However, after a long time, he did not berate her and she calmed down. She found a few good friends and invited the 2 princesses who had a grudge with her. Not long after, the guests arrived. Princess Lingsha carefully observed Chen Ang's expression, her good friends, and her old grudge. When she saw the countless treasures piled up in the Pearl Palace, she could not take her eyes off it. She looked left and right, and everywhere she looked there were all kinds of rare treasures. The maids and guards were tall and beautiful, and the rules were strict. The etiquette was elegant, and the atmosphere was full of power. She tried her best to flatter Princess Lingsha, and the 2 sisters who had a grudge with her looked at her with jealousy. They wanted to curry favor with her, but they were afraid of losing face. The atmosphere created by Chen Ong was completely in line with the mentality of the nobles. It was like a fine wine, intoxicating and intoxicating. Princess Lingsha didn't have much of a resistance. In the beginning, she only knew how to observe Chen Ang's expression, but as time went on, she became completely engrossed in it. She imitated the methods she learned in the palace and the way the royal family enjoyed their power. She mocked her 2 sisters while enjoying the flattery from the people around her. She was born into a wealthy family and was very familiar with such things. When Chen Ong saw that she was completely immersed in it, he smiled coldly and suddenly stood up. Watch me show you a magic trick. Ling Sha came back to her senses. She saw Chen Ong flicking his fingers and a huge ball of lightning appeared. He flicked it downwards. The ball of lightning landed on the jade floor, and a strong suction force suddenly appeared. Everything that landed on the floor was crushed into pieces. It smashed the corals, broke the golden palace, smashed the jade, and scattered the pearls. The entire pearl palace was reduced to dust in an instant. Lingsha and the others felt as if their souls had left their bodies, and their hearts were filled with shock. When the noble mermaids saw the fist-sized gemstones, cat's eye, agate, and jadeite being crushed by the lightning ball, they screamed and fainted. After being shocked by them, Lingsha regained her senses and quickly knelt down in front of Chen Ong. Do you know why I said that all the cultivators in the world do not accept royalty as disciples? Chen Ong said indifferently with his hands behind his back. The third princess, Lingsha, trembled and kowtowed. I know I am wrong. I wanted to see how determined you are to be able to cultivate in the Palace of Riches. Among cultivators, those who can endure humiliation are considered low grade, those who can endure loneliness are middle grade, and those who can endure wealth are considered high grade. I think your temperament is considered high grade. Even if you are surrounded by riches, you will not change your mind. Chen Ong smiled at her, but it made Princess Lingsha even more afraid. It seems like you don't have the ability to do so. Chen Ong sneered. If you have the heart to leave the mortal world and seek Tao, you should treat riches as floating clouds. Do you know what to do? Chen Ong stood on the wreckage of the Pearl Palace and his words were very convincing. Princess Lingsha kowtowed to the ground and did not dare to wipe the blood off her forehead. She said firmly, I know. If Lingsha was his direct disciple, Chen Ong would not let her go so easily. He would have many tricks up his sleeves, and his methods would not be so crude. However, Lingsha was just a spare test subject. As long as he did not waste his efforts and let his investment go to waste, it would be fine. He did not care whether Lingsha would be successful in the future. It was like raising a pig. If a fat pig did not grow meat, it would be taught a lesson. If a pig was lazy and could not grow healthy meat, it was a small matter. Chapter 467. The Pearl Palace was destroyed, and the group of noble ladies from the Merman Kingdom left in a daze, leaving only Chen Ong and Princess Lingsha in the ruins. Lingsha was woken up by this, and she no longer dared to act like a member of the royal family. She changed into a simple Taoist robe and got ready to serve Chen Ong. She planned to travel the South Sea with Chen Ong and cultivate in seclusion. She distributed all the items from the Pearl Palace to the maids and people from the Merman Kingdom, telling them to seek protection from Prince Jiaoli. Ever since their last trip to the Purple Cloud Palace, they had been wandering around the Purple Cloud Palace for a few months without any gains. Not only did the two of them form quite a good friendship, but Prince Jiaoli also wandered around the Purple Cloud Palace, picking up many ownerless Dharma treasures and even Taoist books and notes. Although they were just unorthodox things left behind by the Purple Cloud Palace disciples that Chen Ong had casually killed, to Prince Jiaoli, they were already very valuable. Now that Prince Jiaoli had cultivated a whole body of unorthodox magic power and had several unorthodox magic treasures with him, he was vaguely the #1 prince of the Merfolk Sea Kingdom. If these mermaids sought shelter under him, their future would be better than Princess Lingsha's. However, Lingsha did not mind. She was focused on the Jiguanghan painting that Chen Ong left for her, so she did not have time to worry about other things. Chen Ong saw that although her Taoist heart was clouded, her skills did not deteriorate. That was why he was willing to continue cultivating her. Otherwise, she would just be a one-time test subject. Seeing that she was wholeheartedly refining the frigid cold painting, Chen Ong, who had always been fair in rewards and punishments, gave her some benefits. Chen Ong ordered, "Open up the painting." Lingsha naturally did not dare to disobey Chen Ong. Chen Ong casually dripped 3 drops of Xianming true water onto the cold diagram. A chilling qi instantly thickened the essence of the cold diagram. Ling Sha also felt the true qi from the Xianming true water, and her mana gradually carried a little bit of the true water of Xianming true water that could freeze through the ages and never change. The two of them packed their things and prepared to board the golden ship to escape to the South China Sea. Suddenly, a group of eunuchs from the Merfolk Sea Kingdom rushed over. The Merfolk Sea Kingdom was influenced by the culture of the Middle East. They did not learn anything else, but they learned a lot about the rules of the eunuchs in the palace. The leader of the group was an old eunuch who was probably more than 100 years old. It could be seen that his bad habits ran deep. He bowed deeply to Chernong and said, "Immortal Elder, please wait. Our king has heard that the princess's teacher has come to visit, so he has come to invite you. His Majesty has already set up a banquet in the palace and has invited Immortal Elder to join us." When Chernong saw the fear on Princess Lingsha's face, he shook his head with a smile and replied, "Fine. Let's go see this king. Why did he summon me?" But in his heart, he made up his mind. Looking at her, she hasn't completely woken up yet. Even though she has broken free from her heart of riches and honor, she still hasn't broken free from the influence of the palace. This cautious attitude is the fear that the Sea Kingdom's royal court has accumulated for decades. Fine. I'll work hard again and teach her a lesson. I'll let her know that us cultivators are lawless and domineering. With this thought in mind, he said to the eunuch who came to report, "Please lead the way." When the eunuch saw Chen Ong stepping on the rubble of the jewels, he thought that this trip would be full of twists and turns. Just as he was thinking about how to deal with the King of Mermaids, he didn't expect Chen Ong to agree so easily. He happily bowed to Chen Ong and led the way. After walking for a short distance, they arrived at a palace that was 10 times bigger than Princess Lingsha's palace. Loud cheers could be heard coming from inside, and it sounded like a banquet. Princess Lingsha was furious. How was this a banquet for Chen Ong? It was obviously a banquet that the King of Mermaids had set up herself. When she heard that Chen Ong was a person, she summoned him. This kind of humiliation was equivalent to seeking death. How could Princess Lingsha tolerate it? She even threw her fear of the King of Mermaids to the back of her mind. She took the lead and asked, "What is the meaning of this?" The eunuch was timid and didn't dare to answer. However, the people inside seemed to have heard something. A voice that was obviously depleted by alcohol and women came from the hall. "Are the three of us here? Come in and pour the wine for the guest." Ling Sha was anxious and angry at the same time, but Chen Ong, who was usually calm, did not mind at all. He walked into the hall first, and there were more than 10 strange-looking people inside. Among them, there was a man with disheveled hair and a tattoo on his left lapel. He was playing with a red-scaled snake in front of a drunken old merman. There were others in Taoist robes, some with piercing rings and some with tattoos on their faces. They would be considered demons in Middle-earth, but here they were the King of Mermaids' guest. He took a quick glance and walked up to the stage. The others were also looking at him. When they saw that he was a young man of 16 or 17 years old, they looked down on him. The people here were all uncultured and ignorant. They probably hadn't even heard of Zhenren Jilu before. Naturally, they didn't know how powerful the boy and the shorty were in the Shushan world. Someone laughed, still wet behind the ears. His voice wasn't soft. His words echoed in the hall, causing everyone to laugh. Chen Ong was clearly smiling, but there was nothing in his eyes. It was as if everyone here was just an interesting background, and he didn't care what they said at all. If Qi Jinchan heard what they said, he would kill everyone here. The King of Mermaids sat on the throne and spoke in a drunken manner. He first shouted, "3 ladies, didn't you always want to cultivate and learn Tao? Why aren't you pouring wine for the immortals? If there are immortals who are interested in your talent, Father's efforts will not be in vain." As soon as he finished speaking, someone slammed the table and stood up. He looked at Princess Lingsha lustfully and laughed. "Third princess, you are indeed talented. Scarlet Thunder Island has many spells. As long as you serve me respectfully, I will teach you many powerful spells. No one in the sea country will dare to provoke you." As soon as he finished, he spat out a flame from his mouth, causing the entire hall to cheer. Lingsha looked on coldly. Even she, who had cultivated for a few months, couldn't compete with such uncultured spells. She had accumulated some mana, but she learned from the orthodox mystic door. Her mana was thousands of times more powerful than the uncultured spells. With the Jiguang Han painting, she could easily kill someone like this. However, she still couldn't get rid of the influence of the imperial power that took away their lives. Chenong had to be a role model for her. At this moment, the Mermaid King looked at Chenong with a drunken look in her eyes. She laughed loudly and said, "You are the master of us three girls? I don't think you have any abilities. Do you have any powerful spells? Show me." He looked like he was treating Chenong like a clown. His eyes were half opened as if he didn't care about Chenong at all. The three ladies of Purple Cloud Palace didn't dare to talk to Chenong like this. Even the two elders of Mount Song and Master Lianshan had to be respectful. Even though Chenong was just a reincarnated youth, they had to talk to him as an equal. Lingsha didn't know why her father was so reckless. Seeing him fawning over those uncultured demons that she didn't care about and shouting at her, she was touched. However, there was a layer of paper between them, and she couldn't scratch the itch. Chenong nodded slightly and shouted, "Everyone, do you really want to see?" A bit of primary Chen Shuijing Sword's sword light appeared. Princess Lingsha shuddered as she watched. She couldn't forget how Chenong had killed almost everyone in the East Sea Immortal Abode back at the Purple Cloud Palace. She couldn't forget how Chenong had killed almost everyone in the East Sea Immortal Abode. However, the people around them only sneered and looked down on Chenong. Their eyes were filled with disdain. The Mermaid King didn't even want to talk. He leaned on his throne and waved his sleeve impatiently. "You can try." Chenong smiled and shook his head. He waited for Lingsha to beg in fear, "Master, please be merciful." Shui Jing's sword light had already been unleashed. The sword light was as fast as lightning, and no one here could block it. Even if there were people who reacted in time and activated their protective spells, they would still be sliced into two pieces by the gentle sword light. Except for the unorthodox disciple of the Scarlet Thunder Island, whose sword light bypassed him, the others were all killed in a flash. The Mermaid King was dumbfounded. He couldn't even hold the wine cup in his hand steadily, and it slipped from his hand. He pointed at Chenong and said with a trembling voice, You, how dare you? How dare you?" Then, he shouted, "Someone, come here! Someone come!" Chenong took a step forward and asked with his head tilted, "Is my sword sharp? Are my spells exquisite? Are my skills pleasing to the eye?" Seeing the Mermaid King scared out of his wits, he shook his head and laughed. He turned to ask Lingsha, "Have you learned anything?" Lingsha turned to look at the golden palace that was littered with corpses. Suddenly, she had an idea and broke through the barrier. She waved the cold frost painting in her hand and froze the uncultured cultivator of Scarlet Thunder Island, who said he wanted to take her in. The Mermaid King's eyes were no longer bright. Although he couldn't be as indifferent as Chenong, he was at least treated as a normal person. The last shackles in his heart melted, and he was no longer restrained. The master and disciple left on the golden ship. Prince Jiaoli came in from the back of the palace and saw the Mermaid King lying on the throne. His eyes were filled with disdain. The Mermaid King didn't know anything and said while trembling, "Your sister, she's crazy." Chapter 468. Chenong brought Princess Lingsha out of the Great Qiong Kingdom. Seeing that she was reluctant to leave, he smiled and asked, "You can't bear to leave this place?" Chenong had given Princess Lingsha a few warnings previously, so he was already a very dignified person in Princess Lingsha's eyes. Fortunately, this was how the world was, so she didn't feel that there was anything wrong with it. The prestige of a master was like that of a father or a ruler. If he made any mistakes, it was not an exaggeration to punish him to death. Hearing Chen Ang's question, she replied respectfully, "I don't have anyone that I miss. Even if I have a few good friends, fourth brother and I will take care of them. It's just that my mount was fated with master. I can't bear to leave it here to be used by others." Chen Ong then thought of the dragon whale. Their relationship as master and disciple stemmed from this. The karma between them was understandable. He said, "That's easy. You can follow me to the South Sea. The eye of the sea is huge. Not to mention one dragon whale, we can even raise a group of them. Let's delay for a while and go get it. We'll bring it along with us." Lingsha was still worried. The dragon whale was psychic and she loved it very much. Moreover, it was the reason why she became master's disciple, so she had a higher opinion of it. The only thing she couldn't let go of was this beast. She was always worried that it would be mistreated by others. Hearing this, she was a little excited. She pointed to the northwest of the reef and said, "Our country's whale court is located there." Chen Ong saw that it was the place where the merchants were staying. He frowned and asked, "Why do you want the guests to stay there? Isn't that taking over the whale court?" Lingsha answered nervously, "The whale court has the deepest waters and the least number of submerged reef. As long as the ships don't go too deep into the waterway, they won't run aground." Chen Ong nodded and said, "That's true. Follow me then." At this time, the shops on the reef gradually became prosperous. The people here did not have the time to build houses or loft. Even if they had the time, they would not care about such things. The sea waves were huge. When the storm came, no matter how sturdy a building was, it would still be destroyed. Most of the sea merchants just hung their goods on the reef, letting the passing ships inspect them. Those who were interested could use a boat to cross. Because the waterway was very wide, there was no need to worry about people being stuck behind. The waterway to the whale court had to pass through this sea market. Chen Ong was interested in exploring it, so he slowed down the speed of the ship and slowly sailed past it. The sea market was a gathering of the merchants from all over the world. Due to the ocean currents, storms, and other reasons, the merchants from all over the world had their own coincidences. It was rare for them to arrive together in peace. Therefore, there was a place known as the Four Seas Link. It coincidentally happened to be the time of the year that was suitable for the passage of sea merchants from the four seas. This sea market would be established. There would be 1 or 2 markets in a year, and the amount of sea goods that it took in and sent out was extremely large. Moreover, there was no tax, so that day would be extremely lively. However, this was not the type of sea fair that the Merfolk Kingdom was holding this time. Instead, it was the Merfolk King spreading the news of his daughter's marriage and opening up the resources of the Sea Kingdom. The specialties of the Merfolk country were never lacking in sales. They were extremely rare in the four seas, so there were many merchants that came to form this sea market. Chen Ong did not care about the sea goods that were sold in the market. The treasures that he had broken in the Kaltra Pearl Palace could probably buy half of the market here. No matter how rich a mortal was, how could he be richer than an immortal? It was just that the karma of money was too heavy. Otherwise, Chen Ong would probably be able to support the entire Great Ming dynasty by himself. Therefore, he only headed towards the place where information was exchanged on the sea. Information was the most important thing for merchants traveling the world. The sea market intersected the four seas and accommodated the 8 desolate. It was the place where information was the best. Of course, the sea merchants from all over the world would not miss it. Furthermore, countless sea countries relied on this place to gather information from all over the world. Therefore, there was actually a desolate reef in the sea market that had many tea houses set up. There were even some small boats that brushed past the reef. The people on the boats roared and communicated with others. Just as Chen Ong arrived, he heard a group of sea merchants dressed in Great Ming Dynasty's attire discussing loudly. One of them said, It's all thanks to Crane Collar Sword Hero Wang that the Northwest could form an alliance to protect themselves. Now that the 4 provinces in the Northwest are protecting each other and chasing the bandits out of the province, who knows how many of our fellow countrymen have been saved. Hero Wang is truly a Buddha to all, his merits are boundless. Another person at the side sneered and said, "That traitor Wang Ming colluded with the local authorities. What does he see the imperial court as? He chased the bandits into the Hui tribe and said that he was driving wolves to devour tigers. What does he see the country's law as? It's all you people from the Northwest who worshipped him as the alliance master of the martial world. Do you think I don't know you? You're here to help him. I dare to say that the one who caused chaos in the great Ming dynasty is definitely Wang Ming." The person who spoke then looked back and sneered. "I was wondering who it was. So it's you bunch of traitors. Alliance Master exposed the matter of your true Yang sword sect colluding with the bandits and nurturing the bandit. He led my Northwest Alliance to exterminate your sect. I already expected that there would be some fish that slipped through the net. I didn't expect them to actually escape overseas. Alliance Master suppressed the bandits so that the imperial court could deal with the Tartars without worry. He contributed to the country. How could he be slandered by you traitors? Die." The 2 of them pulled out their weapons and were about to fight with their lives on the line. However, they were stopped by others who said, "You mustn't do this. If you attract the Mermaid Kingdom's guards, there will be trouble." Only then did they stop fighting. However, one of them scolded, "Traitor, you have the ambition of a wolf." The other shouted, "Colluding with the Tartars and reselling ironware and grain." One was a Shangxi aristocrat and the other was a Shangxi merchant. Both of them hated each other and wished they could tear each other into pieces. It turned out that after Wang Ming returned to the Northwest after practicing Taoism, even though he left his family was still a local tyrant with thousands of mu of fertile land. His friends were all local aristocrats, and he had countless connections. Relying on his great martial arts, he became the alliance master of the martial world in the Northwest. He led the families of Shangxi to fight a few battles. Because of his magical power and supernatural powers, he actually won several battles and became famous. Because of his upright background, the imperial court entrusted him with the important task of training the people of the Northwest to protect themselves. One moment of carelessness and he caused a huge ruckus. He actually contacted several provinces in the Northwest to form an alliance to protect himself. Now, he was the commander of a region and had a high position. His reputation in the martial world was even more prominent and he had the potential to enter the martial world of the Central Plains. On the other side was the Shangxi merchant. It seemed that they were colluding with the northern bandit. The imperial court did not have any evidence, but Wang Ming led the martial artists to massacre them and took away a lot of their wealth. Both sides had a blood feud and it was impossible for them to coexist. Even if they were thousands of miles away from the sea, they would still fight to the death. After arguing for a while, the man who had joined True Yang sword sect from Jinshang suddenly sneered and said, "That traitor Wang Ming is just relying on some skills taught by a swordsman. Now we have invited a real senior immortal from overseas. He is now the guest of honor of the Mermaid Kingdom. He is the second island master of the Black Wind Island, Black Demon Sanren. He wields the Black Wind Trident. With this senior's help, he will definitely die a horrible death." Princess Lingxiao asked Chen Ong curiously, "Master, is this person in the main hall?" Chapter 469. When Chen Ong heard this, he had a rough idea of what was going on. He thought to himself, "I left a thought with Wang Ming, but I didn't expect him to become so powerful. I modeled that thought's personality after the apocalypse. I'm already thick-skinned and black-hearted, but it's 10 times more vicious than me. I really can't underestimate it. As a righteous expert, it's not good for me to make things difficult for the Manchurian Qing. I wonder what will happen if I let it out to bear the consequences?" Chen Ong couldn't help but shed tears of sympathy for the Liaodong Tartars. He hoped that they would be able to get out of this predicament as soon as possible. After casually planting a strand of the demon in the body of the Jin merchant, Chen Ong and Princess Lingsha turned to leave and went straight to the whale court. It was the most remote place in the northwest corner of the reef. The sea was wide and deep, and along the way, there were soldiers from the great Cheong Sea nation guarding it, not allowing unauthorized people to enter. Of course, these soldiers recognized the third princess, so Chen Ong wasn't stopped. When they arrived at the pavilion on the reef, Princess Lingsha saw that there were over 100 ships tied together with iron chains on the opposite side of the sea. There were many palaces and pavilions on the ships, and faint music could be heard from them. She couldn't help but frown. She immediately shouted, "Guards! Bring my dragon whale here." The low-ranking official in charge of guarding the whale court ran over with sweat all over his forehead and said fearfully, "Greetings, third princess. Your Highness, the whale court is being used to receive important merchants and guests from overseas. The dragon whale is currently holding up the palace for the High Nation to receive guests, so it can't be moved." Even though Princess Lingsha had a good temper, she couldn't help but be furious. "Who allowed you to use my dragon whale to hold up the ships? I don't dare to disobey your Highness's orders," the low-ranking official said with a bitter expression. "The guests in the palace are auctioning all sorts of rare treasures. Why don't we invite your Highness to take a look? After the auction is over, your dragon whale can be taken out for your Highness to travel." Lingsha wanted to say something else, but she was stopped by Chen Ong. She nodded and agreed, and someone brought them over. Lingsha chose a large ship with ease. The two of them sat down at the side of the ship before she introduced, "Every year, our High Kingdom will sell some products, but it's never as grand as this year. Father is muddle-headed and wants to marry off my sisters. That's why there are so many seafarers coming." Just as she finished speaking, a dragon whale floated up with the palace and slowly came to the front of the ship. There were many different kinds of sea beasts and strange fish in the deep sea. There were even a few mermaids curled up at the side. Princess Lingsha's expression turned ugly when she saw this. She whispered to Chen Ong, "Master, our mermaid sea kingdom has the ability to tame beasts and explore the sea. There are some rare sea beasts here, and because they have special abilities, we sell them to the sea merchants." She pointed at a strange beast that looked like a dragon camel and said, "For example, this sea camel is one of the sea beasts with the best endurance. It can dive several miles deep into the ocean to fish for treasures. After being tamed by our country, it's docile and obedient. It's an excellent choice for collecting deep-sea pearls. We mermaids can't use it, but it's very rare in other countries. They'll spend a lot of money to buy it." As expected, before she finished speaking, the sea beast was bought by a large ship beside her. The asking price here was also very special. There was a puffin-like bird standing on the railing at the bow of the ship. As long as the customer told the puffin the price, the other pair of puffins on the deck would imitate it to the customer. The transaction was done in secret, and no outsiders would know. This was a hidden bid. There was another kind of open bid, and the host merman on the stage would explain it to everyone. They could also go up on the stage and show their treasures to everyone. Then, they would let everyone bid. After the transaction was done, they only needed to give the mermaid officials 1/10 of the profit. Therefore, the stage was bustling with people. There was even someone who drove a boat full of black people. He cupped his fists and said, "There are 59 Kunlun slaves on this boat. They're all very strong and loyal. Everyone knows the reputation of our Cheong Sang High Kingdom for training people." He scolded a Kunlun slave. The Kunlun slave meekly bent down and lifted up a cauldron that was half the height of a person. Looking at the muscles on his hands, he probably had the strength of 800 to 900 caddies. After this display, it was quickly bought for the high price of 500 cubic meters of fine jade and 43 bushels of pearls. The whole boat of Kunlun slaves was handed over on the spot. Only now did Chen Ong understand why they had to auction it on the ship even though there weren't many people. It turned out that some goods were sold on the ship. Without a larger sea area, they really couldn't fit them. As soon as this boat went down, another boat came up. It was actually a boat of Woods-patterned steel. It weighed tens of thousands of caddies, and was bought by someone for 500 gold. Other than that, there were boats of pepper, tea leaves, several hundred caddies of ambergris, and even 50 crossbows and 600 sets of bows and arrows from the Great Ming dynasty. They were all handed over. The scale of the transaction and the speed of the transaction were too much for one's eyes to take in. It truly deserved to be called the Four Seas Sea Market. When the dragon whale floated up again, this time, there were many exotic flowers and herbs on top of the dragon whale. The dragon whale seemed to be excited as it slapped the water with its huge tail. It seemed to be jumping for joy as it deviated from the direction of the dragon whale and approached Chen Ang's boat. Ling Sha exclaimed, "It's my whale!" The merman official who brought them in quickly ran over and begged for mercy. "Princess, please calm the dragon whale down. I can't afford to ruin this sea market." Even though Ling Sha was angry, she wasn't unreasonable. She flew onto the dragon whale and controlled the water to slap its huge body. Finally, the dragon whale was calmed down. Only then did the people above let out a sigh of relief. Dozens of mermaids carried trays and displayed the spiritual herbs in the pavilion. Many seafarers came up from both sides and shouted noisily. Chen Ong heard someone asking, "Do you have 1,000-year blood coral grass?" Coincidentally, this spiritual herb was a specialty of the Purple Cloud Palace. It wasn't commonly seen in other places. Maybe only the Xiankong Island in the North Sea grew it. Otherwise, it would be like searching for a needle in a haystack. The sea was so vast that it was like searching for a needle in a haystack. Chen Ong looted the 9-story Pearl Palace, and there were many in his collection. He couldn't help but pay attention to them. He saw that it was a man in a Taoist robe. He was also an overseas itinerant immortal with Taoist power. Others could only vaguely see him, but Chen Ong could clearly see that he cultivated a type of prime magnetic Dharma power, and it was quite extraordinary. Chapter 470. Chen Ong faintly smiled and shouted, "This item isn't worth anything. Since fellow Taoist has a use for it, I'll give it to fellow Taoist." With that said, he wrapped the spirit herb in his true qi and delivered it to the man. In the Four Seas, there weren't many people who could practice magnetism. Besides the individual immortals in the North and South Poles, there was only Tian Chi Esteem's family on Copper Coconut Island in the South Sea. Therefore, this man's background wasn't a secret to Chen Ong. It was just a coincidence that he gave the herb to him. Chen Ong didn't plan to trick him. That man had a heavy responsibility and had to get the 1,000-year-old blood coral grass. He hesitated for a while, then accepted it shamelessly. He cupped his fist and said, "My master wishes to concoct an elixir, so he sent me here to gather the herbs to concoct the elixir. I really can't do without these herbs. Copper Coconut Island's Luha hereby thanks you." Chen Ong also cupped his fist and said, "Jin Ling's Qixia Mountains loose cultivator Chen Ong greets fellow Taoist." Chen Ong knew about Lu He's background. He was the son of a Chaozhou seafarer with the surname Lu. He was sailing with his father when they encountered a hurricane and the ship capsized. In desperation, his father tied him to a plank of the ship and let him drift with the current. Unexpectedly, a wave hit him on the back of a big whale. The whale carried him on its back and swam for thousands of miles. It kept its head above the sea and didn't sink into the water. When he swam near Copper Coconut Island, Tian Chi Esteemed saw him and saved him. At that time, Tian Chi Esteemed hadn't been cultivating for long and didn't have any disciples. He loved Lu He's talent, so he gave him coconut milk and panaceas. Although they were master and disciple, they were closer than father and son. Some time ago, Tian Chi Esteemed wanted to make a panacea for immortality. Lu He was the eldest disciple of Copper Coconut Island, so he left the island to find the panacea for his master. He and Chen Ong had a good conversation, so they returned to the boat. Lu He slowly told him the story. Originally, this medicine was not difficult to find. I heard that the Purple Cloud Palace, where the 3 phoenixes of the South Sea lived, had this kind of spirit herb. However, when I went to look for the medicine some time ago, I saw that the Purple Cloud Palace's sea eye was closed, and the island that welcomed guests was sealed. I had no choice but to find another way. Chen Ong was stunned for a moment, then he laughed and said, I wonder how many spirit herbs fellow Taoist is lacking? Please tell me all of them, and I'll see if I can be of more help. Lu He's face was full of joy as he said, Other than this one, which is a little rare, the others are common spiritual herbs found in the sea. There's no need to trouble you. He took out a bag of mother's sand from his sleeve and offered it. I had prepared a lot of gifts and befriended Chief Steward Dong Xiu of the Purple Cloud Palace, asking her to gather some spiritual medicine for me. I didn't expect that a great enemy of the Purple Cloud Palace would come and suppress their palace, so there was no conclusion to this matter. This bag of metamagnet divine sand was originally prepared to exchange for spiritual medicine, so please don't reject it. Chen Eng's generosity made Lu He heave a sigh of relief. Cultivators were most afraid of debts of favors. It was easy to repay a high-interest debt, but difficult to repay a debt of favors. Previously there was Senior Shen Gongbao, and recently there was Fairy Su Feinyang. Both of them were people who could make you pay with a little favor. Lu He was also a disciple of a prestigious sect, so how could he not know? However, this medicine was of great importance, so Lu He could not reject it, so he accepted it shamelessly. However, he had to be vigilant to avoid bringing disaster to his sect. Chen Eng's acceptance of the things made the two of them more comfortable with each other, and Lu He had a good impression of him. Chen Ong called Ling Sha over and smiled. I also obtained these spiritual medicines from the Purple Cloud Palace. Fellow Taoist, why don't you tell me what else you lack? I'll give it to you here to avoid trouble in the future. Lu He was surprised. Chen Daoyu was also allowed to collect so many spiritual medicines because he befriended their manager, Dong Xiu. This made Princess Ling Sha's heart tremble, and it also made Chen Ong think, I can't tell the truth about this. I can't say that I killed them with one sword strike, killed Dong Xiu, destroyed the passage of the divine sand, and forced the Amei sect to send people to show up. Then, I made a deal with them and obtained 1/7 of the Purple Cloud Palace. He could only lie. That's not it. The truth is that I exchanged with the master of the Purple Cloud Palace. Lu He did not suspect anything, and the two of them had a pleasant conversation. The other spiritual medicines that Lu He needed were also provided by Chen Ong. When he heard that Chen Ong was going to the South Sea to set up his sect, Lu He volunteered to go with them and help Chen Ong set up his sect. The huge dragon whale was put into the 9-turn Yellow River formation by Chen Ong and accompanied by Macho. Now that there was nothing else to worry about, the three of them boarded the golden ship of good fortune and headed towards the South Sea. Lu He learned the true teachings of the magnetism Dharma power of the Copper Coconut Island, and it happened to be connected to the magnetism restriction in the golden ship of good fortune, so he could see some of its wonders. Sensing the ocean-like pressure in the core of this Dharma treasure that was driven by the magnetism, Lu He did not dare to underestimate it. He had only seen this kind of divine magnetism light on the magnetic peak of the Copper Coconut Island. Although the divine magnetism aura in the Copper Coconut Island was not a Dharma treasure, it was Tian Chi's most powerful technique, and it was also what he relied on to cultivate his earth spirit Dharma power. The magnetic force in Chen Eng's golden ship was just a part of the force that grew from the divine magnetism thunderball. The difference was so huge that Lu He was confused. Could it be that this Chen Daoyu's Dharma power is stronger than Master's? This absurd thought flashed through his mind, and was almost instantly thrown to the back of the mind of this child, who respected his teacher. The golden ship of good fortune used the magnetic force to escape, and its speed was even faster than Lu He's trident. There was another difference between the copper coconut island and other people. Nowadays, all the cultivators in the world valued swords, but only the copper coconut island favored flying tridents, which were better than ordinary flying swords. On the ship, Luha often hit the water with the flying trident to practice the art of forking, which made Chen Ong feel strange, and he consulted him a few times. Only then did he know that the art of forking was very similar to swordsmanship, and it was only equivalent to a different kind of swordsmanship. The sea was vast, and the waves were vast and boundless. The golden ship of good fortune entered the South Sea from the East Sea, and it traveled for a month before they saw a faint black shadow floating in the stormy waves. At first, they thought it was an ordinary island, but when Luha stood up in shock, they realized that they had arrived at the copper coconut island. Many whale heads of different sizes appeared in the surrounding sea, and each of them had a piercing mouth. When they opened their mouths, dozens of silver arrows were shot into the sky. Looking at the island, the coconut trees on the shore reached the sky, and the scenery was picturesque. On the shore, there were 20 to 30 bare-armed men and women in short clothes with open sleeves. Each of them was holding 3 to 5 coconuts, and they jumped into the sea like pellets, playing with the whales. Chapter 471. Luha had joined the sect much earlier than his fellow disciples. Most of their spells were taught by him on behalf of their master, so he had a high prestige among them. Seeing him come back with his friends, they all greeted him warmly. Of course, some of them were dissatisfied. They pretended to be happy, but in fact they were hiding evil intentions. Chen Ong sensed a malicious intent from a triangular-eyed man, which was directed at him and Luha. That man smiled and asked with concern, "Big brother, did you have a smooth trip to find the herbs? I'm friends with Dongxiu. If I didn't find the herbs, you can take my letter to her. She will definitely give me face." Luha said indifferently, "Everything is fine. I didn't delay Master's important business. I heard that the Purple Cloud Palace has provoked a powerful enemy, and their gate was broken. Now they have sealed their cave, so I can't ask for the herbs. If it wasn't for Chun Daoyou's help, I don't know how many times I would have failed. I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to come back within 10 years. As he spoke, he introduced Chen Ong to everyone and bowed to them one by one. When Chen Ong returned the greeting, he felt the triangular-eyed man staring at his back with malicious intent. He couldn't help but sneer in his heart. This person is so narrow-minded. Just because I helped Luha, he hates me. The rumor that Tian Qi only accepts disciples based on fate, not good or evil, is true. If it weren't for Tian Qi's strict sect rules, he would have been in trouble long ago. But looking at Lu He's behavior, it seems that he doesn't know his fellow disciples' true nature. The copper coconut trees on the island stood tall and straight, looking like umbrellas. Following the uneven topography of the shore, the coconut trees were lined up in rows, each of them 100 zhang tall, looking very neat. Even though Chen Ong had seen coconut trees before, these giant copper coconuts that were hundreds of meters tall and even steeper than skyscrapers were rare. The white sand under his feet was like a sprinkle. Chen Ong saw that everyone on Copper Coconut Island was barefooted and dressed in green. He couldn't help but feel mischievous. He also stretched out his feet to take off his shoes and socks, strolling barefoot on the beach. He had a different kind of fun. Copper Coconut Island was very vast. Although it was called an island, it was actually not much smaller than Indonesia's territory on Earth. On the island, there was a mountain peak that reached the horizon. Chen Ong could feel the magnetic earth veins that branched off from the North Pole, circulating on the mountain peak. The magnetic pure aura was copious and powerful, and all metal objects on the island could not be preserved. As for the magnetic mana, only Lu Ho was able to successfully cultivate it. It could be seen that even on Copper Coconut Island, this mana was not something that anyone could cultivate. Chen Ong knew that this magnetic mountain was made by Tian Qi from the mud of the swamp. Just by looking at it, he knew that Tianqi's earthly immortal fruit was not just for show. Not to mention that after he made this mountain, his mana had greatly improved and was much stronger than before. Luha ordered people to pick the copper coconut tree to serve Chen-ong. This tree was as big as a dustpan. Its shell was also made of 1,000-year-old copper coconut tree iron wood. Ordinary flying swords couldn't cut it. Someone carried several of these huge trees. The triangular-eyed man took 2 and put them in front of Chen-ong. He didn't open the coconut tree's shell. He wanted to see Chen-ong make a fool of himself. He himself blocked the way of others. It should be known that on the copper coconut island, once released, anything refined from metal would be sucked in by the magnetic mountain. He was sure that Chen-ong didn't know about this and wanted to make him lose face. Among magic treasures, metal was the sharpest. If Chen-ong wanted to open the copper coconut tree's shell, he would have to release his flying swords and magic treasures. At that time, not only would the magic treasures be sucked in by the magnetic mountain, but he would also lose face. If he could make Chen-ong and Luha become enemies, it would be even better. Chen-ong naturally knew what he was thinking, but he was speechless. Luha was not a dead man. It seemed like Copper Coconut Island was too isolated. The disciples couldn't even scheme against each other. These kinds of idiots were considered simple and honest among mortals. It was also because Luha let them be, otherwise, even 10 of these idiots would have been tricked to death by him. As expected, when Luha saw it, a cold light flashed in his eyes. However, he didn't lose his temper in front of Chen-ong because he wanted to protect his master's face. Instead, he personally picked up the Eastern Tai Divine Wood, a knife made from the 10,000-year-old copper coconut tree's shell. He wanted to open the coconut tree's shell for Chen-ong. Our copper coconut island has a North Pole true magnetic earth vein. Ordinary metal objects can't be released on the island. If fellow Taoist carries metal objects, you need to be careful. On the 1st and 15th of every month, when my master absorbs the true magnetic earth vein, you need to guard your mind and silently use your mana to suppress the magic treasure's abnormal movement. At this point, he suddenly remembered the golden ship that Chen-ong used to bring him here. Suddenly, he smiled bitterly and said, "I forgot about fellow Taoist's golden ship. Such a huge magic treasure that weighs tens of thousands of kilograms, it's better not to go within 1,000 miles of the island. Fortunately, there are still 8 days until the 15th. At that time, I will personally send fellow Taoist off." Chen-ong shook his head and smiled. "Brother Lu, there's no need to do it. I'll do it myself." As soon as he finished, the halo behind his head moved. The water view sword turned into a halo and flew out. With a flash, it cut open the copper coconut in front of him, revealing a clear pool of water inside. Under the contrast of the milky white coconut flesh, it was extremely moving and cute. It made Chen-ang's mouth twitch. When Chen-ong tasted it for the first time, it was indeed refreshing and tasty. It was extremely fresh and sweet, refreshing one's heart. His action made many people at the side look at him in a new light. They thought that the friends that their eldest senior brother made were not ordinary. It was rare to see such a sharp magic treasure that was not restrained by the magnetic force. Although the flying sword made from the Tai Divine Wood had extraordinary power, it lacked this kind of sharpness. It couldn't be considered superior. To restrain the copper coconut shell, it was not as neat as Chen-ong. Luha smiled bitterly. "I've embarrassed myself in front of you." He was extremely ashamed. He was also a little angry at this junior brother who had tolerated him in every way. The triangular-eyed man was called Puda. He had a miserable life since he was a child. Luha didn't care about him because of the relationship between him and his master. Today, when he saw that Puda had humiliated his master, he decided to punish him. Copper Coconut Island had strict rules, so he could only do this. After they left, Luha took Chen-ong to a guest room to rest. Ling Sha waited on the side. After Luha left, she complained to Chen-ong, That person is so rude. Teacher, I see that the atmosphere in Copper Coconut Island is quite simple. Why is there such a person here? His mana is mixed. Tomorrow, I'll ask him for guidance and make him pay back his face. Chen-Ong waved his hand and smiled. There's no need to do this. Tianqi is very strict in the sect. How can he let his disciple embarrass him? Also, Tianqi is very protective. If you take revenge, it will make him want to rebel. It's better to let him deal with it himself. If there's anything wrong, I'll make it up to him. Chen-Ong gave her some homework and then let her go. He shrunk the golden ship of good fortune to the size of a finger. He secretly resonated with the magnetic force of the magnetic mountain and started to understand the mysteries of the magnetic force. Any treasure made of 5 metals would not be able to survive the magnetic force of the north and south yin and yang magnetic force. Among the immortals, there were only 3 to 5 things that were not afraid of being absorbed. However, Chen-Ang's golden ship of fate was not among them because of its heavy metal quality. Chen-Ong had to complete the primary magnetic prohibition so that the golden ship of fate would not be afraid of being restrained and would become even more powerful. Chapter 472. Early the next morning, Lu He suddenly paid a visit alone. Chen-Ong could tell that he wanted to apologize for what happened earlier, so he invited him in. Sure enough, Lu He used his transcendence energy to gather 10 copper coconut sprouts and gave them to Chen-Ong, saying, "Earlier, it was my fault for not disciplining them properly and neglecting fellow Taoist. Previously, when I received fellow Taoist's help, I was already uneasy. Yesterday, I even offended you. I'm truly ashamed, please forgive me." He was about to kowtow when Chen-Ong hurriedly said, I don't dare to offend you. Lu He said, I planted these 10 copper coconut sprouts a long time ago. They're only 100 years old and can't be of much use. Originally, they were more than that, but the island's copper coconut plants were loved by my teacher, so I didn't dare to monopolize them. These 10 copper coconut sprouts are my apology gift to you. I hope you won't blame me. When Chen-Ong heard this, he knew that the way he looked at Tong Yi yesterday, as well as his fondness for the coconut juice, were all seen by him. Seeing how humble and peaceful he was, Chen-Ong knew that he was a person worth befriending, so he naturally wouldn't blame him. He smiled and said, Fellow Taoist, I will accept your kindness. But I don't dare to agree with your apology. I'm friends with you, it has nothing to do with others. Of course, Chen-Ong had to say that. If he accepted Lu He's apology, wouldn't he have to talk about seniority with the people of Copper Coconut Island? Tianqi wasn't good enough to be Chen-Ang's martial uncle, so it was better to be friends with each other. Then he heard Lu He said, Yesterday Shifu and I reported fellow Taoist Chen's arrival. When Shifu heard it, he was very concerned about fellow Taoist Chen's arrival. I wonder if fellow Taoist Chen would be willing to meet him? Chen-Ong did not refuse, so he arranged a banquet for the evening and invited Chen-Ong and the others. Chen-Ong thought about it and knew that he couldn't be below Tianqi, so he wanted to show some of his abilities so that Tianqi wouldn't dare mess up their seniority. Otherwise, if Tianqi kept calling him his martial nephew, wouldn't Chen-Ong be at a disadvantage? He thought to himself, My celestial river magic power has already gathered 2 types of true water. I'm afraid that he won't be able to see through the profoundness within and take advantage of me. It's better to reveal some things again. He was also curious about the magnetic mana that Lu He cultivated. In the world of Shushan, the 2 poles of true magnetism were separated by 10,936,365 miles. The energy was chaotic, and neither immortals nor mortals could have it. Moreover, it was connected to the heavenly pillar and the earthly dimension, and was supported by the universe. Its mysteriousness was definitely not below that of the vast Milky Way. Although he didn't have sect Master Chen's arts, he couldn't enter the most profound 3 pure deity arts of this world, the true teachings of the Gautama Buddha. However, it was not inferior to the innate 5 elemental Dharma power and the Tai Yin and Tai Yang heavens. In Chen Ang's opinion, it was very promising. Unfortunately, Tian Qi had his own inheritances, and studying the magnetic energies was very complicated. Chen Ang wanted to use Tian Qi's experience to help him understand the magnetic energies, but he couldn't create a new foundation. Chen Ang wanted to use Tian Qi's experience to help him understand the magnetic energies. However, the prerequisite was that Chen Ang's understanding of the magnetic energies was not below Tian Qi's. Only then could he exchange his experiences. Originally, it would have been best to create a magical treasure with magnetic energies, like the 2 poles of the universe disk. I could use it to verify what I've learned and put it into practice. Unfortunately, I've used up all the divine magnetic iron tools, and the other materials are rare. I have to go to the 2 poles of the universe divine magnetic mountain to find them. I can only use the origin magnetic aura chi here to practice one of the magical powers of this world. What Chen Ang wanted to practice was one of the 2 most widely practiced magical powers in Shushan. Those bald donkeys were the best at this. Which of them didn't have a Buddha's light magical power? In the Xianmen, it was known as the divine light. It was considered a common spiritual art in the Xianmen. Loose immortals knew a few of them, but when they reached the level of the 6 freaks of the universe, or even the celestial immortals, they would have endless power. For example, the Tai Yin divine light of destruction, the great 5 elemental divine light of destruction, the ice soul divine light, the red corpse 7 evils divine light, the innate separation divine light, the sandalwood Buddha light, the being and formless protection divine light, the Tai Yin netherworld divine light, the great thunder divine light, and the blood shadow divine light, which was the reason why the Blood God Sutra was so powerful. It was the best magical power in Shu Mountain. In Shu Mountain, the magical power could be divided into 6 categories: thunder, water, fire, light, sound, and qi. Most of the magical power didn't belong to the 6 categories, and most of them were secret technique. Now, Chen Ang's water magical power was one of the strongest in the world. He was also very proficient in fire and thunder magical power. As for the remaining 3 magical powers, he was just a beginner and wasn't very good at them. And what Chen Ang wanted to practice now was the easiest magical power of the divine light. It was called the metamagnet divine light. It was probably because the force of metamagnet was shapeless and incorporeal, and its nature was close to the light magical power. That was why it was suitable to be cultivated in the divine light, and it had the power of absorption. It was more convenient than the other true meanings of tranquility, the penetrating chill, and the evil will of the blood god. At this moment, Chen Ang was using his primordial spirit to absorb the North Pole true magnetic force under the thousands of feet of the earth vein. He derived 2 magical powers of the metamagnet divine light. Both were extremely powerful, and even the sky immortals couldn't handle them. He wasn't afraid that Tian Qi would look down on them. However, it was difficult to choose between the meridian magnetic light and the yin-yang magnetic light. After thinking about it, he realized that although the meridian magnetic light could be used with the 12 Seasons Waterscape sword to add another layer of magical power, he only had half a day's time after all. He didn't have the time to refine the meridian magnetic light in such a short time. Only the yin-yang magnetic light was specialized in one kind, and he had the special magical power of yin and yang to supplement it. In addition, the North Pole magnetic light was close to the yin attribute, and Chen Ang had the help of the Taiyin true water. So, he could practice it in half a day and it was quite powerful. Then, he used the Milky Way Dharma power to swallow the pure magnetic aura and refine it into a thin layer of magical light. Then, he used the Taiyin true water to refine it into a wisp of extremely yin and extremely soft metamagnet divine light that contained the power of swallowing. He kept it in his left eye. Like this, he kept it in an endless stream. After a few hours, he refined a wisp of magical light that was as thick as a thumb. It was the Tyene metamagnet divine light, and its power was not to be underestimated. Time passed quickly. Not long after, Lu He knocked on the restriction of the place where Chen Ong was cultivating in seclusion and invited him to attend the banquet. Tian Chi's cave abode was under the metamagnet divine mountain. The place where he received his guests was a round stone room that was 100 feet wide. From the top to the ground, it was more than 200 feet high and about 10 acres wide. The 4 walls were as smooth as jade, and there were dozens of doors on the walls. There were 8 jade brushes that were as thick as teacups and about 10 feet long hanging from the ceiling. The tips of the brushes were burning with an olive-shaped silver light, which brightened the whole room. This cave abode was not bad, and it was not bad for that person to come. However, the 9 bends Yellow River formation in Chen Ang's sleeve was still holding the Purple Cloud Palace's 9-story Pearl Jade Palace. How could he be moved? Seeing him talking and laughing as usual, Lu He secretly admired his profound ability to maintain his composure. When the 2 of them entered the cave abode, they saw a thin old man with a long beard sitting cross-legged on the main seat. He didn't look like a monk or a Taoist. It was Tian Chi. His eyes were half closed, but when Chen Ong came in, he suddenly opened them and looked carefully. When he saw Chen Ong clearly, he waved his right sleeve and took the jade stool to his side, sitting on the main seat with Chen Ong. Chapter 473. No matter how strong you were, you couldn't cover up your traces. Tian Chi thought that Chen Ong was just a young man, and because he had offended Chen Ong first, Tian Chi thought that Chen Ong was just a young man. He was proud, and he cared about his reputation the most. He wanted to punish Chen Ong in front of Chen Ong, and he wanted to show that he was an elder of Chen Ang's sect. Unexpectedly, as soon as he saw Chen Ong, the Tai magnetic pure qi in Chen Ang's body reacted, and he understood some details about Chen Ong. The magnetic supernatural power was divided into yin and yang. The North Pole magnetic pure baleful qi was yin, and the South Pole magnetic true dipper was yang. The magnetic essence energy under Copper Coconut Island was a branch of the North Pole magnetic true dipper. Therefore, it was also of the pure yin attribute, and was called the extreme yin magnetic force. Chen Ong had combined the North Pole pure qi and the Tai pure water, so his Tai magnetic force was even purer than Tian Chi's. Therefore, as soon as they met, they sensed the Tai magnetic force in their bodies repulsed each other, so they knew a little bit about each other. Even though his Tai magnetic force is a little weak, it's purer than mine, and his magic power is not weaker than mine. He and Lu He are in the same generation, but how can I call myself an elder of Chen Ong? If news of this were to spread, wouldn't I be laughed at by my fellow cultivators from overseas? Thinking of this, Taoist Tian Chi moved Chen Ong to his side. Tian Chi's metamagnet godly light was called the Tai metamagnet godly light. Even though it was the same as Chen Ang's Tai metamagnet godly light, it didn't have the properties of yin and yang. Since it couldn't coexist with the magnetic field of the South Pole's sun, it couldn't cultivate the great supernatural power of the yin-yang divine light of magnetism. Therefore, it didn't deserve the name Extreme Yin. His Extreme Yin Divine Thunder, on the other hand, could be said to live up to its name because it could gather and disperse at will, seeking its own yang attribute. He was aware of this as well. This was related to the purification of his magnetic magical power. He had gone into seclusion several times in an attempt to purify his magical power, but to no avail. Seeing Chen Ong sit down next to him, he asked, "Where is Puda?" Lu He, who was sitting next to him, answered, 11th Martial Brother is waiting outside." Tian Chi Shangren sneered, "You have followed me for many years, have you ever seen anyone make me lose face like this?" He heard everyone in the hall say in fear, "No." Puda Martial Brother was confused for a moment. Tian Chi the Exalted being said coldly, "Bastard! He's jealous of senior brother, neglecting our esteemed guest, and insulting our copper coconut island's reputation. How can we let him off lightly? Buddha has always been narrow-minded and can't stand it. It's fine if you guys give in to him. Now you actually dare to betray your fellow disciples. Won't you all kill each other in the future? Even if I die 100 times, it won't be enough. Buddha, who was kneeling on the ground, trembled. He fell to the ground and begged, "Master, please spare my life." Tianqi the exalted being looked at him coldly, then glanced at Chen Ong. Chen Ong smiled. He knew what he meant. Tianqi the exalted being didn't want to do this. After all, Buddha had only made a small mistake. He just wanted to teach him a lesson. In the future, if he didn't change his mind, Tianqi the exalted being would be even more ruthless. However, Chen Eng's position was very high. He was no lower than Tianqi the exalted being, so Buddha had offended Chen Ong even more. After all, there was a big difference between offending someone of the same generation and offending someone of the same generation. Chen Ong hiding his real power made Tianqi the exalted being even more rebellious. He felt that he had lost face because of Chen Ong, so he had done this to show Chen Ong. If Chen Ong knew what was good for him, he would give in to him and help him regain his lost face. That would be great. If Chen Ong didn't give in, they would become enemies. It was easy to solve this matter. Chen Ong would ask him for a favor and take responsibility for some of his own mistakes. He would ask him to push the boat along the current and let the matter pass. After that, he would be punished a little and would naturally be happy and harmonious. But why would Chen Ong give in to him? Most cultivators were like nice people. They didn't want to lose face because of trivial things. Therefore, even if they lost face, they had to take care of Tianqi's feelings. But for cultivators like Chen Ong, was Tianqi's friendship worth losing face? Didn't Nuwa destroy the Shang dynasty? She became a god and destroyed the world? Chen Ong laughed and said, "Tianqi, my friend, you're too." He didn't finish his sentence. He lowered his head and started drinking tea. Tianqi didn't know what to say. Chen Ong didn't know what was good for him and had even seen through him. Tianqi couldn't keep his face. He shouted, "Take this bastard away and whip him 500 times." Buddha was dragged away and whipped loudly outside the hall. Chen Ong had humiliated Tianqi, but he couldn't do anything about it. When he talked to Chen Ong again, his words became more aggressive. Lu He was in an awkward situation. Tianqi wanted to find a chance to attack him, but Chen Ong always stopped him. After such a long time, his heart was filled with anger, so he decided to just ignore it and forcefully said, "In the 4 seas, I'm the only one who cultivates in magnetism magic power. The other cultivators with magnetism magic power either live in seclusion at the 2 poles or establish their own mansions on the axis of the earth, so it's not convenient for me to ask for guidance. Now, Chen Daoyu, a handsome cultivator from the Central Plains, also cultivates the magnetic element. I'd like to ask you to help me." Without waiting for Chen Ong to refuse, he released the cave residence's restriction and released the magnetic mountain's suction force. Tianqi flew away and landed on the top of the mountain. This mountain was connected to the Copper Coconut Island's Earth core magnetic field, which was created by Tianqi himself. It turned out that this place was a huge swamp, a place where tens of thousands of years of filth had accumulated. The mud in the swamp belonged to the Yin magnetic field, and it moved along with the magnetic force. It contained a little bit of power, which was attracted by the North Pole magnetic field. It was extremely heavy, and anyone who was caught by it would find it hard to escape. If it was an ordinary cultivator, they would at most refine a sinister treasure and scatter it into a swamp, pester people, collect the treasure, and trap their enemies. However, Tianqi had created a mountain that was as tall as the clouds. It contained the essence of the North Pole true magnetic field. It could absorb gold and iron. It was very convenient to absorb people and things. It was Tianqi's home ground. He didn't have good intentions in choosing this place. He wanted to humiliate Chen Ong. Chen Ong seemed like he couldn't refuse, So he took out the 12 Yuanshan waterscape swords. Rings of light flashed, and 12 moon-like sword lights surrounded the mountain. They were even more powerful than the 49 divine wood swords that Tianqi had taken out. Chapter 474. Lu He recognized that it was the sword Chen Ong had used the day before. He didn't know what kind of sword it was, but he knew that since it was watercolored and wasn't affected by the magnetic force, it must be something like 10,000-year-old ice. He envied Chen Daoyu and said, "Chen Daoyu is so lucky. He has a flying sword that isn't affected by the magnetic force. Even though our Tai godly wood swords are spiritual, they aren't sharp enough to be considered high-class flying sword. Even the 49 10,000-year divine wood swords that Master uses are just low-class flying sword. They are not as sharp as fellow Taoist Chen's sword aura, and they are not as powerful as his." "Master, you mean that Chen Daoyu has mastered the magnetic force as well? I don't know how strong he is, but I'm sure he's much stronger than me." Not only him, even Tianqi couldn't help but raise his eyebrows when he saw Chen Ang's sword light. He looked serious. Tianqi's eyes were much sharper than Lu He's. He could tell that even though the shape of the sword had changed, it was still made of metal. To be able to refine metal into such a shape, it had to be extremely powerful. Tianqi had only heard of one flying sword with such a high quality. That was the Nanmingli fire sword that Patriarch Bodhidharma had used to kill demons and beasts. Even though the Amasek's purple and green twin swords were powerful, they didn't belong to the Nanmingli fire sword. The Nanmingli fire sword was made of fire. It didn't have the same shape as the Nanmingli fire sword, but it was made of metal. It was extremely sharp and pure like fire. Even though Chen Ang's sword wasn't as powerful as the Nanmingli fire sword, it was like water. Tianqi thought, even though this sword is powerful, it's not one of the few treasures in the world that aren't affected by the magnetic force. If I use my full power, he won't be able to resist it. He also cultivates the magnetic force, how could he not know that? Even though Tianqi was confused, he didn't retreat. Tianqi made the 49 godly wood swords turn into many cyan sword lights. He was also a master of swordsmanship. The 49 sword lights were released at the same time. Instead of being chaotic, they worked together and formed a net made of godly wood sword. He did not rely on the sharpness of the flying sword, he only used his skillful swordsmanship. The momentum of the sword was heavy and strong, carrying a vigorous mana. It squeezed the space where Chen Ong moved his sword. With this swordsmanship, he could be considered as one of the top experts in the sea. It did not disgrace his great reputation. Such a spectacular display, it attracted the cheers of the spectating disciples. Chen Ong waited for him to make his move and only responded normally. It was only when the divine wood sword net was set up that he let out a clear shout and pointed his finger. Only then did the 12 primordial stars split into a circle and transformed into 100 zhang-long silver rainbow. It swept across the sky, and with the sharpness of the flying sword itself, it tore the sword net into pieces. He had only used a little of his swordsmanship to defeat Tianqi, but he had managed to defeat Tianqi. Tianqi tried to defend himself. His 49 godly wood swords were being bullied like children. Even though he tried to defend himself, he couldn't. He was humiliated in front of all the disciples. He shouted, "Chen Daoyu's swordsmanship is powerful, but we are competing with the magnetic force. Watch my spells." As soon as he finished speaking, he shrugged his back and grabbed at the void with his hand. Dozens of balls of lunar metamagnet divine lightning shot out. Suddenly, smoke and light shone for thousands of miles, illuminating the lone peak. The sound of wind and thunder shook the earth. The metamagnet divine lightning exploded in the air, shocking Chen Ang's protective sword circle to the point that it fluctuated and became a little messy. Tianqi was happy. The lunar magnetic thunderbolts could be released and condensed at will. If his opponent couldn't defeat them, his body and soul would be destroyed. But if it met with a metal treasure, it could be absorbed by the lunar magnetic pure qi. Now that the lunar magnetic thunderbolts had exploded and turned into Tai magnetic pure qi, it must have stopped Chen Ang's sword. Tian qi of the lunar magnetic pure qi started to attack again. Origin magnetic true qi was formless and incorporeal, only a stagnant force. Logically speaking, if Chen Ang wanted to use it freely again, he would have to refine his flying sword. But Chen Ang used his Milky Way Dharma power. The 12 Yuan Fun Tian Qi of the 12 Yuan Fun Tian Qi of the Milky Way Dharma power turned into 6 beams of sword light. They were invisible and invisible. The lunar magnetic pure qi couldn't absorb them. The 6 beams of sword light turned into 1. Tian qi of the lunar magnetic pure qi couldn't block them. They were all torn apart by the sword light. Tian qi of the lunar magnetic mountain didn't even have time to summon the magnetic mountain divine light. Chen Ang's sword light touched his throat and he was defeated. Apart from Tian qi, nobody could see through Chen Ang's sword lights. Even so, Tian qi was so furious that he almost fainted. Chen Ang's sword lights were like a thunderbolt, like a raging ocean. Apart from Tian qi, nobody could see through them. Without holding back, the magnetic essence qi on the magnetic peak transformed into a greenish-white qi and enveloped Chen Ang. Then, he raised his hand and a beam of magnetic divine light flew into the air. With the help of the magnetic essence qi from the magnetic peak, it immediately expanded to the size of an acre. It shone with a golden light that was so dazzling that it was difficult to open one's eyes. Wherever the magnetic light went, the fine iron would lose control and be absorbed by it. Esteemed Tian qi wanted to capture Chen Ang's 12 water sword lights and suppress them under the magnetic mountains. But unexpectedly, when the magnetic light shone on the waterscape sword, not only did he not feel the suction force, but he also borrowed the force to speed up. As he leaped forward, the sword light could no longer be seen. He only felt a chill on his forehead and reached out to touch it, only to find that his right eyebrow had been kicked off. When Tian qi saw his eyebrows droop down, he shouted furiously. He was furious. He had nowhere to vent his anger. He hated Chen Ang to the core. He activated the magnetic mountain and released a large amount of pure magnetic qi, which fused with his pure magnetic godly light. He had spent a lot of time and effort on the island to activate the strongest defensive spell he had ever created, the pure magnetic great deployment spell. The divine light and the primary magnetic essence qi on the peak of the magnetic peak turned into a 5-colored divine light, covering everything within a radius of 40 to 50 miles. Starting from the magnetic peak, it shot down diagonally and connected to the ground in all directions, forming a 5-colored smoke screen that enveloped Chen Ang within. The 5-colored smoke screen was shrinking inwards, trying to pull Chen Ang into it. The divine light of primordial magnetism was inside. No matter how powerful one's supernatural power was, one could not break through this invisible and intangible power. Relying on the absorption power of the true magnetic earth veins of the North Pole, the golden ship of fate and the gold and iron magical treasures in Chen Ang's dantian trembled violently, almost breaking out of his body. Chen Ang let out a long laugh. The 9 bends Yellow River Grand Formation in his sleeve unfolded, suppressing his body. The 12 primordial waterscape swords suddenly merged into one, transforming into a ring of light between real and fake, between existence and non-existence. With a casual wave of his hand, it enveloped the entire copper coconut island. He shouted, "Life and death, between existence and non-existence, 12 primordial stars as one day." The 12 swords formed a mysterious spell formation which divided the area within a radius of 1,000 miles into 2 different worlds. Chen Ang stood outside the 2 worlds. It seemed like the whole world was in his swords. With a flick of his finger, a speck of metamagnet divine light fell into the circle of sword light, absorbing and suppressing the endless 5-colored mist. Then, the extreme metamagnet divine light suddenly swallowed the endless metamagnet divine light, as if it had eaten too much, and returned to Chen Ang's dantian to digest. Only then did Chen Ang let go of the sword light. Only then did the world within 1,000 li suddenly return to normal. The disciples of the copper coconut island looked confused. Only Tian Chi Esteem's face was pale and he gave up resisting. Chen Ang smiled and said, Tian Chi Esteem's cultivation is profound. I have learned a lot from this competition. However, if we continue, it will hurt our friendship. How about we stop now? What do you think? Tian Chi Esteem's lips moved. After a long while, he replied calmly, just as you said. He had been defeated by Chen Ang and his arrogance had been destroyed. He didn't dare to provoke Chen Ang anymore. Chen Ang's method of training was very rough. It was not as good as the spring breeze and rain of Mountamay. Chen Ang just wanted to destroy Tian Chi Esteem's arrogance with a tyrannical method. Chen Ang's arrogance had been deeply imprinted in Tian Chi Esteem's mind. If he didn't do this well, he would become Tian Chi Esteem's enemy. Chen Ang was very brave, and that was why he had dared to torture Tian Chi Esteemed like that. It seemed like the result was good. At least Tian Chi Esteemed felt that he was one generation lower in front of Chen Ang. It was a psychological bottom line. Everyone had a different psychological bottom line. For example, colleagues had a higher self-esteem than their leaders. If they scolded their colleagues, they would turn against them, but if their leaders scolded them, they would be submissive. Chen Ang had crossed Tian Chi's bottom line many times, which made Tian Chi lower his bottom line. Many things that he couldn't accept before, now that their positions had changed, he could understand them. Chapter 475. The disciples on the island understood what was going on. They didn't dare underestimate Chen Ang anymore. Even though Tian Chi was in Copper Coconut Island, he had seen how terrifying Chen Ang's sword had been, so he didn't think that Chen Ang couldn't defeat him. Tian Chi glanced at the disciples and went back to the cave. He even moved Chen Ang to the left to show his respect. At that moment, Buddha had already come back. Two disciples dragged him to Tian Chi. He didn't dare argue with Tian Chi, so he just stared at Chen Ang. That guy didn't know how to hide it. Everybody could see that. Buddha hadn't seen the fight between Tian Chi and Chen Ang because he had been tortured. The other disciples who had seen the fight sighed in their hearts. Chen Ang had brought about his own destruction. Because he didn't have good relationships with people, no one went to remind him at this time, and he was left to deal with the calamity. As expected, Tian Chi smiled coldly and told his subordinates to hold him down. If he didn't repent in the future, he would be sent back to the reincarnation cycle. The atmosphere in the palace became warmer and warmer. The atmosphere in the palace warmed up. Chen Ang smiled and said, Tian Chi, my friend, I've been amazed by your power. You can gather and disperse the Tying magnetic force at your will. The Xiantian magnetic force formation is a whole new world. I admire you a lot. I regret that I didn't meet you earlier. Chen Ang was just being polite. Tian Chi didn't take his words seriously. But the two of them were fighting because of face. Now that Chen Ang was giving him face, Tian Chi was a bit disappointed. He knew that Chen Ang was 10 times stronger than him, so he couldn't get back at him in the future. Therefore, they decided to let bygones be bygones. Tian Chi bowed and said, Chen Daoyu, what are you talking about? I can use the North Pole cosmic magnetic field to cultivate, but my lunar magnetic field is not pure. Only by raising the essence chi of the clouds and gathering the power of the Tai heavenly thunder can one cultivate the divine light, but it has no tying quality and is extremely heterogeneous. Therefore, it can only be named the Tai divine light of magnetism. How can fellow Taoist cultivate the wonders of the Tying divine light alone without any geographical advantage? Chen Ang smiled faintly and said, Cultivators of Taoism have the right to communicate with each other. As the ancient people said, wealth, law, land, and companionship are the most important things. Since Tian Chi has addressed me as fellow Taoist, I don't dare to be stingy. Tian Chi heard that Chen Ang wanted to learn from his sect. He was a bit angry, but he didn't dare to show it. He explained, "My sex magnetic Tao was created by studying the magnetic pure evil aura. Because the magnetic Tao is a branch of the North Pole, it doesn't have two magnetic poles. It's affected by the chi of the earth, so it's not pure. I need the magnetic mountain to help me." Chen Ong had other thoughts after listening to his words. He asked in reply, "Fellow Taoist, if your primordial magnetic mana is successful, you must borrow the primordial magnetic malevolent chi of the North and South Poles to temper yourself. If you don't have a treasure that can restrain the primordial yin and primordial magnetic genuine chi of the Sun, it would be difficult for you to succeed. I only know of one such treasure, and it is the cosmic light plate hidden in the jade cliff of Amei. This treasure is related to the establishment of the extraterrestrial divine mountain of Amei in the future." Tianqi smiled bitterly and said, "The path of cultivation is difficult. That's all." Chen Ong, on the other hand, thought of his own magnetic golden ship of fate. If this treasure was completed, the North and South Poles would be as easy as walking on flat ground. But before it was completed, he could go to the stars beyond the heavens, but he could not get close to the magnetic land of two poles. This treasure was made of a huge amount of refined iron. Before the yin and yang magnetic divine thunderball of fate reached the 36th layer, it would also be restrained. Originally, the restrictive spell had to reach the 54th layer. The lunar and solar magnetic pure evil aura in the yin and yang magnetic divine thunderball had to be combined to form the Tai Chi magnetic pure evil aura. Only then could the magnetic pure evil aura break through the magnetic pure evil aura and travel between the two poles. But the lunar and solar magnetic pure evil aura was the best place to cultivate. Otherwise, it would take a long time. Chen Ong, on the other hand, was confident that with his own magic power, he would be able to force his way through the magnetic field and enter the divine sand of the South Pole. But now, the golden boat only had 22 layers. He didn't know how long it would take. If he could get Tianqi's help, he could use the magnetic mountain to suppress the magnetic pure evil aura. Then, he would be able to cultivate it in the yin and yang magnetic divine thunderball. When he thought that, he secretly told Tianqi a few things. He told him about how to use the magnetic energy to reach the Taiyin level. Tianqi immediately felt refreshed. He looked at the information with his soul, as if he had just received a priceless treasure. When he talked to Chen Ong, he became absent-minded from time to time. He studied the magnetic treasure, and as expected, he improved a lot. He forgot about his grudge against Chen Ong and started to ask Chen Ong questions. Chen Ong took the opportunity to ask Tianqi some questions. Tianqi had been studying the magnetic Tao for hundreds of years. Even though he wasn't as knowledgeable as Chen Ong, he still had a lot of experience. The two of them let down their guard and started to talk to each other. The less experienced disciples had already left. Only Tianqi's disciples, like Lu He, who Tianqi thought highly of, could stay and listen. They all learned a lot from each other. Some of the disciples even improved a lot. Tianqi could see that Chen Ong really wasn't trying to steal their legacy. They were just talking, and Chen Ong was even more generous. He answered all the questions he asked, which made him seem like a stingy person. Chen Ong didn't ask any more questions, but Chen Ong didn't ask any more questions. He felt ashamed and thought, Qin Daoyu is from the mystic door. He understands the magnetic Tao much better than I do. He knows a lot about the magnetic Tao. How could he not have any powerful techniques? How could he be interested in my treasures? I'm still fussing over a small thing like that. That's not right. He didn't know that because of Chen Ang's complicated background, everything he had learned and comprehended had to be organized into a system. His skeleton was perfect, and the key was there. It was just that he lacked flesh and blood to fill it up. Therefore, the key tricks that he cherished were useless to Chen Ong. Instead, it was the words of experience and subtle understanding that could provide Chen Ong with data to fill his flesh and blood. Therefore, Chen Ong was happy to see it and didn't care about his concealment. This time, Chen Ong had truly convinced this overseas itinerant immortal. In this way, there were many things that could be discussed in depth. Chen Ong pondered for a moment, then smiled and said, "I have the same thoughts as fellow Taoist. The land of the two poles of the true magnetic field is of great importance to people of the magnetic essence like us. We must borrow the strength of our fellow Taoists for this. I see that fellow Taoist has the same idea as me. In order to break the two extremities magnetic baleful stars, I have refined a precious treasure. I hope fellow Taoist can help me." After that, he took out the golden boat. The golden boat was floating in the air, its two wings were shining with golden lights. Tianqi sensed that the golden boat was releasing an incredible magnetic strength, which wasn't restricted by his magnetic mountains. He looked at it carefully and realized that the golden boat contained an incredible magnetic strength. Chen Ong wasn't lying when he said that it was a treasure that could help him travel between the two Jinqi realms. Chapter 476. Chen Ong released the restrictive spells on the golden boat so that Tianqi could see what was going on inside. Tianqi was shocked. He thought, "Luckily, Chen Daoyu didn't want to make things difficult for me. He only used his sword skills to defeat me. Instead, it is my heart that is not in the right, and my actions are too extreme. If he were to use this magic treasure to counter me, even if I have the innate magnetic grand formation, how can it be a flying magic treasure? The Xiantian magnetic formation can control yin and yang. Even I know that the Xiantian magnetic formation is connected to the Xiantian magnetic formation. Chen Daoyu's treasure has many powerful lightning spells. If he used them all at once, the entire copper coconut island would turn into a sea of fire. No matter how big my house is, I wouldn't be able to survive." He didn't have any scruples anymore. He asked, "I'm not strong enough to help you make the treasure stronger. What do you want? If Tianqi can help you, I'll do my best." Chen Ong laughed and said, "This is not difficult, I won't make it difficult for you. Every 129,600 years, there will be a great calamity in the world. Although it won't bring the world into chaos and return to the primordial world, it can still cause tsunamis and landslides within thousands of miles, floods will flow, fiendish flames will soar into the sky and turn it into a sea of fire. I'm sure that the next minor Yuan tribulation will occur under your Taoist's cave abode, and the consequences will be severe. I have obtained the fate of the four seas, so I have to worry about the tribulation sent by the heavens. At this time, the tribulation has not happened, and the days have long been set. In the future, it will be related to the prosperity of Ame. Although I could have eliminated the matter of Yi Xiu attaining the Tao a long time ago, I have to take into account the karma of the same path and the calculations of the senior, so I can't trigger this tribulation in advance." When Tianqi heard this, his primordial spirit was alerted. Even though he didn't know how to predict the future, with Chen Eng's help, he was able to see what Chen Ong was saying. He was shocked and said, "I know what's going on under the island. The magnetic mountain is pressing down on the ground, so people can't escape. Who would have thought that there would be such a disaster? If you know that, why did you leave me and my disciple here? It's better to get rid of them." Chen Ong hesitated for a moment before he shook his head and said, previously when Longbrow Jinren was still alive, he had already foreseen the impending doom. For this reason, he had worshipped the green seal and prayed silently to the way of heaven for 49 days. He had made a great vow and bequeathed to the disciples of Ame to encourage them to shoulder the heavy responsibility of this calamity. Moreover, the heavenly Tao had its own rules. Before the time came, there would definitely be a calamity when the tribulation began. The minor Yuan tribulation is different from the others. It is a tribulation of time and has its own timing. It can only be triggered and eliminated, not suppressed. Tianqi said angrily. Why didn't the Amei sect tell me about this? They must be plotting against us, master and disciple. They want me to be the one to open the tribulation and cheat me of my hard work. They want me to be in a difficult situation, and I might even have to lower my head to them. How hateful! Chen Ong didn't take his words seriously. From Tianqi's point of view, Amei had gained a lot of external merit points and a favor. Chen Ong had gained nothing, but he had to accept Amei's favor. How could they do that? But from an objective point of view, Longbrow Zhenren had foreseen the external merit points, so why should he have a share? Amei, Guangqingzi and many others had to return the external merit point. How could they be so kind as to share it with him? The Amei sect was a righteous sect of the mystic door, but it wasn't a charity. They had saved him once because they were on the same path. How could they think of anything else? Chen Ong had also taken the external merit points from Amei. If he didn't care about the cause and effect and wanted to take all the external merit points, it would be too much. Besides, he always liked to do good deeds. He knew how to be a good person. How could he agree with Tianqi here? In this tribulation, the formation of the Yellow River of 9 Tunes might not be able to turn misfortune into fortune like Yuer Island did. There were many great formations in this realm that gathered the essence of the Great Way and had the ability to suppress fate energy. The Yin and Yang dust formation could suppress the fate energy of Mount Amei and lead the central land. The formation of the Yellow River of 9 Tunes could regulate the Ci of the 4 poles and suppress fate energy overseas. However, the fate energy of this tribulation was at the 2 poles. Chen Ong had to deduce and perfect the real innate magnetic formation to suppress the fate energy of the 2 poles. The primordial magnetic formation couldn't be compared to the 9-turn Yellow River formation. It wasn't the way of true water-sky river. Chen Ong only knew a little about the way of magnetism and was far from mastering it. He was far from being able to use the primordial magnetic formation to suppress the north and south poles, combine the Earth's axis, mix yin and yang, and adjust the evil spirit. With this in mind, Chen Ong just smiled and said, "That's all for later. My golden ship is made of thunder, fire, and magnetism. My friend, please control the magnetic peak and help me suppress the golden ship of good fortune into the Earth's lungs. With the help of the Earth's fire, poisonous wind, and magnetic field, the ship's restrictions can be tempered. When it reaches the 36th layer, it can choose an opportunity to escape to the 2 poles." Tianqi thought for a long time and then rejected, "My friend, how can I dare to leave the island? Am I not afraid that when I come back from the 2 poles, the Earth's fire will explode and kill my sect? Chen Daoyu, I will help you. I just want to thank you for your advice. I will guard the Earth's lungs on the magnetic peak and not let anyone trigger it." Chen Ong smiled and said, "My friend, you don't have to do this. I naturally have a way to make you feel at ease." He pointed at the towering magnetic peak outside the cave abode and said with a smile, "My friend, do you remember the formation you used in the last battle? I will help you perfect this formation and refine this magnetic peak into a supreme treasure like the jadeite cliff. I will also release a little of the accumulated power in the underground so that you will be able to suppress it. If you still don't feel at ease, I can entrust your disciple to guard it." Tianqi was overjoyed when he heard this. If he could get Chen Ang's help to perfect the innate magnetism formation and refine the magnetic peak into the formation map, he would really have nothing to worry about anymore. He would be able to obtain a supreme treasure that could suppress fate and make the Copper Coconut Island's fate even more lasting. After the 2 of them came to a decision, they asked Chen Ong to move to the entrance of the magnetic peak. They showed the formation map of the magnetic peak to Chen Ong and told him where the entrance of the Earth's lungs was. The Taihua fire was hidden deep in the Earth's lungs and was separated by the ancient layers. It was unexpected and couldn't be predicted by ordinary divination. Even if a powerful cultivator tried to predict it, he wouldn't be able to predict it. There were 13 layers in the ancient layers. They were either as hard as steel or extremely hot. Each layer was harder than the previous one. Chen Ong used the golden boat to enter the earth's lungs. He saw that the ground was very deep. First, there was a layer that was as hard as steel. The golden boat pushed aside the soil and rock. With the help of Tian Chi's magnetic peak, they soon reached the bottom of the magnetic peak and entered the earth's lungs. After a few thousand feet, they arrived at the source of the poisonous fire in the earth's lungs. The earth's lungs were filled with yin qi. There was a sea of lava under the Moon Island's volcano. There was also a sea of fire under the magnetic peak of the Copper Coconut Island, where there was water, fire, wind, and thunder. It was like an ancient world. Chen Ong knew that the Taihua fire was hidden deep in the earth's lungs. He couldn't predict where it was unless the karma was going to erupt. Because of the magnetic peak above their heads, not only did the Taihua fire accumulate, but there was also a lot of yin qi in the earth's lungs. There were also many monsters hiding there. Water, fire, wind and thunder were also forming ancient scenes. The first yuan heavy water, one of the 7 kinds of pure water, was formed by yin qi. One drop weighed 129,600 kilograms, which was exactly 1 yuan. That was why it was called the first yuan heavy water. Chapter 477. Most of the reason why Chen Ong was willing to come down was because of the first yuan heavy water. After all, no matter how rare the opportunity to refine the golden ship of fate's restrictions was, it was not as important as the improvement of Chen Ang's heavenly river dermic powers. Under the crust of Copper Coconut Island, due to the magnetic peaks, all kinds of yin and turbidity were concentrated. Other places did not have such good conditions. There were many holes in the lungs. Before the yin and turbidity qi condensed into boiling lava, it would turn into wind, thunder, water, and fire. Because there was a meandering magnetic vein, there were also many gigantic magnetic peaks that looked like floating islands and mountain ranges floating in the air. The underground nightmare wind shuttled between them. Because this wind was formed by the flow of heavy, turbid air, it was the most vicious and terrifying. Under the nightmare wind's caress, even a person made of metal would have their flesh and bones thinned and their bodies disintegrated. The yin and yang magnetism in the lungs was the most sensitive. Because it was trapped in a narrow space, it was the most sensitive. Any disturbance would destroy the fragile balance of the 2 poles and trigger the yin thunderstorm. Chen Ong steered the golden ship of fate all the way forward, and no one knew how many yin and yang magnetic forces filled the lungs were disturbed. The violent yin thunderstorm triggered the strong wind, and the wind and thunder were several times more terrifying. The bone-chilling wind mixed with the divine thunder that could destroy 100 miles away stirred the lungs of the earth into a terrifying world of dancing silver snakes and turbulent storms. However, the violent storms could not get within 3 feet of the golden light of the golden ship. Chen Ong, on the other hand, could seize the opportunity to absorb the essence of the mother wind in the wind, which was also an excellent material for crafting wind magic treasures. Meanwhile, the golden ship of fortune flapped its wings on its own. The 2 sun god fire wings were like a pair of huge thunder wings, absorbing a large amount of thunder essence from the yin thunderstorm to nourish itself. The yin and turbidity qi accumulated in one place and condensed into the first yuan water. This was something that Chen Ong had to get his hands on no matter what. Chen Ong took over the control of the innate magnetism grand formation, and at the same time, he used the magnetic rays to search the 3,000 miles of underground lungs. It was as if he could see the sky and hear the earth, and the divine rays of magnetism were feeding back to him. In Chen Ang's eyes, the earth and rocks were like nothing, only the spots where the dark and turbid gathered were blocked by clouds of different colors, and he could not see clearly. He saw that in the 3,000 miles of underground lungs, the strange insects were swimming in the air, and the evil beasts formed from the dark and turbid were also attacked by Chen Ong together. The 3 red-haired strange corpses in the lead had long manes, red faces and fangs. They flew very quickly in the ground, and turned into a poisonous smoke that sprayed towards Chen Ong. One of them was hiding in the poisonous smoke, and emitted a phosphorescent fire. When it came into contact with a Taoist cultivator's body, it would turn into fire and burn the body. Only a treasure of true water could extinguish it. Chen Ong recognized these strange creatures. They were the zombies that cultivated in the soil for 100 years. Under the moon, they shed their stiff bodies and grew a body full of red hair. They were called flying yikshaws. These evil beasts were the remains of cultivators that were born after being infected by the earth's turbidity. Their bodies were as hard as diamond and they could escape through the earth and fly. They were originally one of the strongest transformations of the zombies. Seeing the 3 zombies covered in red hair and the Qi penetrated deep into their bones, Meng Qi knew that they were the best ones that were about to transform into the red-haired roar. Even the rogue immortals had to retreat, not to mention in the earth's turbidity. Even their lair was even more ferocious. The 3 flying yikshaws were dressed in ancient clothes. They seemed to be people from the Shang and Zhou dynasties. They wore feathered clothes and star crowns. They looked like they were from ancient times. They spat out the Dan they cultivated to attack Chen Ong. The Dan was mixed with hundreds of phosphorescents. When each of them exploded, they exploded into fire that was about an acre in size. However, they were all collected by the 9 bends Yellow River formation in his sleeve. The 3 flying yikshaws were enraged after losing the inner Dan that they had worked hard for hundreds of years. This Dan was the key to their transformation in the future. How could they let it go? They did not even bother to hide their bodies and pounced towards Chen Ong relying on their body of diamond. They stretched out their huge claws to grab Chen Ong. If it were someone else here, they would not be able to do anything to their bodies that were comparable to magic weapons. However, they were courting death. They actually crashed into the golden ship of fate. Under the impact of the golden ship, no matter whether they were flying yikshaws or red-haired roars, even a mountain would collapse. Chen Ong only felt the golden ship under his feet shake slightly. He saw a flying yikshaw's bones and flesh turn into mud. The fire in its stomach spurted out of its 7 orifices. In the blink of an eye, it was crushed into pieces. The other 2 escaped fast enough and were only brushed by the aftershock. Even so, most of their muscles and bones were broken. Chen Ong felt that they were useful, so he controlled the golden ship to suppress them. After killing these 3, the rest of the evil beasts did not pose a threat and scattered in panic. Chen Ong also found a spring. He drove the golden ship to cut through the veins of the earth and collected more than 50 drops of first yuan heavy water. When he wanted to search again, Tian Qi on the ground became impatient and asked with his primordial spirit. Chen Ong had no choice but to run towards the Eye of Fire. He released the 9 bends Yellow River formation and connected the rivers underground to prevent alarming the Tai fire. If there was an accident, he would have enough time to suppress it. At this moment, Chen Ong had already broken through 2 layers. One layer was as hard as steel and could only be restrained by Chen Ang's golden ship of good fortune. The other layer contained the remains of ancient creatures. They were all huge and ferocious. One could vaguely see the majestic bodies of ancient creatures. Even though they had been buried underground for a long time and had been eroded by the Qi, there were countless phosphorus fires hidden in the white bones, which were controlled by the flying yikshaw. In order to break through this layer, the slightest bit of movement would alarm the remains of the archaic creatures. At that time, countless phosphorescent flames would fly out like stars and explode together. It was likely that it could burn everything within 3,000 li and set off boundless flames. At the same time, it would trigger the qi of the ancient creatures. Chen Ong had the golden ship to protect him, so even though he was not afraid, it would still be very troublesome. He had to carefully break through this layer. The last layer was the boiling liquid of the earth lung, which was extremely hot. Chen Ong saw this and used his primordial spirit to peep at the secrets of heaven. He then found out that the earth heart fire I was in this layer, about 50 miles below. However, the poisonous fire of the boiling liquid was very powerful. Later on, Ishio was trapped here and understood how to use fire to control fire. He almost released the earth heart fire eye and caused a disaster. Chen Ong steered the golden ship of fate and didn't need to worry about the heat of the boiling lava. After 50 miles, he could feel the heat pressing down. The pure white power of Tai Huang fire was boundless. The earth core fire I nurtured countless essence of fire. The entire Tai Huang fire I was like a wriggling fire dragon, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. Its wings were already formed, and a short horn vaguely appeared on its head. Chen Ong knew that the day the fire dragon turned into a dragon would be the day the Tai fire I would be born. Tianqi Hermit used the circular light technique to check through Chen Ang's hand. Seeing this, his face turned gloomy and he said in a bad tone, "What a good earth-lung Tai fire. It has already become a climate, and it is difficult for humans to control it." Chapter 478. It was not easy to suppress the explosive power of the Tai Hor. Tianqi esteemed would not be able to do it. Because of this, when he saw Chen Ang's strict arrangement, he realized his own shortcomings. Chen Ong looked at the Tai Huiqi. It was like a dragon, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws like an evil dragon. There was a short horn on its head. Chen Ong knew that the Tai Huiqi had already become a dragon. The Tai Huiqi was naturally able to sense it. It knew that it would be a great sin when it was born, so it took the shape of a dragon and planned to become a dragon. If it escaped, the earth turbid Xian Yinqi could transform and become a primordial flaming dragon. It could control heaven and earth and kill and commit endless sins. Tianqi esteemed saw what Chen Ong saw through the round light spell, so he no longer doubted Chen Ang's words. These days, he had been practicing the magnetic peak day and night, drawing the hidden pure evil qi of magnetism to set up the inhibition. This was to prevent the Tai Hua dragon from escaping when Chen Ong attacked it in the future, which would lead to more sins. Chen Ong assisted him with the Yellow River of Nine Bends formation. After all the preparations were done, Chen Ong saw that the Tai Hua dragon had not opened its eyes. He knew that, fate is on my side. If it was a little more sensitive, it would have sensed it. But it didn't, which meant that fate was not on its side. Seeing this, Chen Ong naturally would not let go of this opportunity. He controlled the North Pole magnetic evil spirit to project the essential magnetic qi onto the golden ship of fate. The colorful divine light of metamagnet gathered from the vast underground magnetic veins and was projected down from the top of the magnetic peak, shining directly on the divine fire wings of the golden ship of fate. The pure golden wings produced a huge devouring force out of nowhere, swallowing the divine light of metamagnet and transferring it to the yin and yang creation divine thunderball. The yin and yang of the thunderball turned the colorful magnetic light into a black and white magnetic talisman. It started to refine the inhibition of the yin and yang creation divine thunderball. Under Chen Ang's control, when the thunderball was wearing down the primordial magnetic essence qi, it purified the five-colored magnetic light into two colors of black and white. One was the Taiyin while the other was the Taiyang. The two colors combined and shot towards the fire dragon that was formed by the fate of Taiyang. The black and white divine light twisted and brushed off a thin layer of Taiyang red mist from the fire dragon's body. The mist was swallowed by the two fire wings of the sun god and turned into their own nourishment as usual. Chen Ong sat cross-legged on the bow of the golden ship of fate. He controlled the golden ship to absorb the evil qi of the North Magnetic evil qi and the Tai Hua dragon, and turn them into true talismans to refine the inhibition. Tianqi esteemed was controlling the natural magnetic formation. The colorful magnetic light kept coming from the magnetic veins, which was absorbed by the divine thunderball. The divine thunderball had the yin and yang creation divine light of magnetism, which kept removing the power of the Tai Hua dragon. This fire was neither gold nor iron, and it was not even close to the 5 elements. Its essence was a bit of mysterious yin, which was restrained by the yin and yang creation divine light. The black and white divine light of magnetism twisted and produced a wisp of mysterious yin fire, which was absorbed into the golden ship and turned into a true talisman to refine the inhibition. At first, it was just a wisp of mysterious yin fire, and it needed Chen Ang's help to refine it into true talismans to refine the inhibition. Later, the inhibition was upgraded, and the power of the golden ship grew, so it didn't need Chen Ang's help anymore. It could digest the mysterious yin fire on its own. A few days later, it could absorb a few wisps of the Taihua dragon's red mist at the same time, and turn them into the inhibition of the golden ship. This time, the efficiency was increased by more than 100 times. In less than a month, the thick protective red clouds, colorful lights, fire clouds, and red mist of the Taihua dragon transformed from the Taihua dragon were only left with a thin layer. This immense fiery aura was the key to the Tai Fire Horn Dragon's growth. Now that the golden ship had reduced it to this small amount, the Tai Fire Horn Dragon felt uncomfortable. The huge Tai Fire Horn Dragon's claws and teeth looked ferocious as it started to struggle slightly. Chen Ong saw that it was about to wake up. He pointed at the golden ship beneath him, and a black and white divine light of metamagnet that was several times thicker shone on it. The divine light of magnetism shone on the Taihua dragon, and the Taihua dragon became calm again. At the same time, he urged the golden ship to cast the yin and yang divine rays of magnetic light 5 times in a row until the red mist around Huiqiu was the thinnest. Huiqiu swayed uneasily, and an inconspicuous scale fell off from its tail. Once again, it turned into a thick red mist and wrapped its whole body inside. The golden ship was like a bottomless pit, swallowing the divine light of magnetism sent by Tian Qi. At the same time, the Taihua dragon absorbed the Taihua dragon's profound qi. The Taihua dragon didn't increase its temperature, and the Taihua dragon's profound qi didn't expand anymore. The Taihua dragon's profound qi was shrinking, and the Taihua dragon's profound qi also disappeared. Chen Ong took the opportunity to let Macho out. She coiled on the golden ship of fate's 2 giant sun god fire wings and breathed in and out the red mist. This red serpent was originally of the yin element, so although the Xian Yin Taihua Qi was violent, it was suitable for it to breathe in and out, cleansing its body and improving its nature. In the enormous firepower that the golden ship was constantly spitting out, what Mo Cho absorbed could not even be counted as impurities. The divine light of magnetism sent out by the golden ship was as big as an acre. Every time the divine light of magnetism shone on the Taihua dragon, the Taihua dragon's profound qi was like a steel knife. Even though Chen Ong used the divine light to eliminate the Taihua dragon's profound qi from time to time, the Taihua dragon's profound qi was still struggling. However, the Taihua dragon was trapped by the 49 magnetic qi ropes of the natural magnetic formation. With the yellow river of 9 bends formation trapping its entire body, the fiery eye-horn dragon was like a dragon trapped in a shallow pool. All it could do was stir up the boiling lava and struggle with all its might in the lungs. Most of its consciousness was sealed by Chen Ang's spell, and its body was suppressed by the 2 great formations. Although it roared and roared in the lungs, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws, stirring up a sea of fire that threatened to boil the earth's crust, the Taihua dragon was trapped in a small inhibition spell, so it couldn't do anything, let alone break through the earth's crust. The sea of fire it released couldn't penetrate the golden light of Chen Ang's golden ship of good fortune, and it couldn't reach Tian Qi's treasure either. Even the Taihua dragon, who was lying on the divine fire wings of the sun, couldn't hurt the Taihua dragon. However, if the Taihua dragon acted rashly, it would be easy for the golden ship of good fortune to see through its weakness. It's time. If I keep weakening it, I'm afraid I'll destroy the minor yuan calamity. The essence-fused divine light has already worn away the spirituality and suppressed the extreme fire's true self-consciousness to its limit. According to my calculations, in another 3/4 of an hour, the extreme fire eye's original consciousness will awaken. Chen Ong thought to himself, let's take this last chance and play it big. As soon as he finished talking, he jumped onto the golden ship and landed on the Taihua dragon's head, where the Taihua dragon's acupuncture points were located. This time, the black and white divine light was like a steel knife. It turned into a Tai Chi diagram and cut the Taihua dragon's horn. The horn was cut off by 3 inches. The divine light wrapped around the horn and brought it into the golden ship. The divine light then sent it into the divine thunderball. After suffering such a heavy injury, the fiery dragon transformed from the Taihua Yen could no longer suppress its furious consciousness. It suddenly opened its eyes and woke up, roaring towards the sky. Its gigantic body that was tens of thousands of feet long tumbled in shock. The pure white Taihua Yan's endless firepower poured in all directions. Chapter 479. The fire dragon, which was formed by the Tai Fire Eye, struggled angrily, shaking the earth's crust and causing the primordial chi in the earth's lungs to tumble. The wind, earth, water, and fire all stirred up the earth's lungs like it was the end of the world. Countless strange creatures formed by the earth's turbidity dispersed. The hanging stalactites and ice, the boiling lava in the earth's crust, the phosphorescent white bones, everything exploded at the same time. Endless cold ice, divine thunder, fire, and earth's turbidity were stirred up, trying to turn the 10,000 miles underground into powder. Even Tianqi, who was sitting on the magnetic mountain, could sense this change. The magnetic peak shook incessantly. The aftershocks on Copper Coconut Island roused everyone with a start. They only thought it was an earthquake. Only Lu He and a few others were able to guess the inside story. They were secretly horrified, their minds wandering indeterminately. Amidst the countless disasters, a golden light stood still. No matter how many divine thunders and fires attacked, it could not be shaken in the slightest. Instead, it emitted a vast golden light, suppressing everything, trying to calm the tremors. The 9 rivers turned into chains, with the underground River as the main body, absorbing endless chi and firmly locking the fire dragon. Tianqi was amazed and thought, he really is the direct descendant of the primordial innate God, the disciple of the mystic door. Even 10 of me wouldn't be able to suppress the Tai fire test. I wonder how powerful he was in his previous life. He was only a teenager when he reincarnated, and he didn't even have the fruit of the disbanded celestial way, but he already has such power. Feeling the immortal and indestructible gold in the golden light of the golden boat of good fortune, he was even more shocked. The gold is immortal. If this golden boat of good fortune is complete, it will be like the fruit of the golden celestial way. It will be indestructible. Since ancient times, only Guang Qingzi became a golden celestial without ascending. Even Taoist Longbrow from a May mountain ascended with the fruit of the celestial way. However, fellow cultivator Chen's Dharma treasure has a trace of a golden immortal's Taoist rhyme. That's really shocking. Tianqi immediately put away the inexplicable delusion in his mind and activated the magnetic mountain restriction spell. The multicolored magnetic light from the innate magnetic formation shone in all directions, gradually calming the chi in the lungs. With the help of the magnetic light, the golden light emitted by the golden ship of fate suddenly expanded and absorbed all the multicolored magnetic light. It rotated in the golden ship's restrictive spell and turned into a strange black and white light. As soon as the light appeared, it froze the great fire horn dragon in place. The black and white colors swirled, forming a hazy gray chaos. The great fire horn dragon acted as if it had met its natural predator. It was so intimidated that it dared not wreak havoc. It hurriedly retracted its power and hid deeper into the earth's lungs. Emocho, who was entrenched on the fire wings of the sun god, saw that the fire dragon had escaped. Her body expanded several times in size against the wind, and she opened her mouth to swallow the specks of mysterious yellow that fell from the broken horn on the fire dragon's head. Macho, who was sitting on the fire wings of the god of sun, saw the Tai fire dragon escape. Her body expanded in the wind, and she opened her mouth to swallow the yellow light that fell from the Tai fire dragon's broken horn. After shedding its skin, Macho shrunk to only 3 inches long and went into Chen Ang's sleeve to digest what she had gained. After shedding its skin, Macho shrunk to only 3 inches long and went into Chen Ang's sleeve to digest what she had gained. Tianqi, who was guarding the magnetic mountain, also sensed the change. He was relieved when he felt the Tai fire eye disappear. He wasn't an anomaly like Chen Ang. He didn't have the confidence to deal with this minor Yuan tribulation. If the Tai fire force exploded, no one on Copper Coconut Island could escape except for him. Moreover, even if he escaped alone, the karma he created would be enough to make him fall into depravity for countless lifetimes, and he would never be able to ascend to immortality. Tianqi was on top of the magnetic mountain. He had the advantage of time and place. He had the magnetic Great Deployment spell to help him. Chen Ang had been trapped by the magnetic Great Deployment spell, and that was the perfect time for him to take revenge. He had used the magnetic mountain to suppress the Earth meridians, and Chen Ang wouldn't be able to come up. However, such wild thoughts didn't arise in his heart at all. It wasn't for any other reason than because after this incident, he felt that if Chen Ang wanted to kill him, it wouldn't be much more difficult than crushing an ant. This person's dermic powers, divine arts, and even treasures were the best of the best in this realm. He was at the level of an ordinary heaven immortal, and he was far from being comparable to him. A golden light flashed in the earth veins, and a golden beam of light shot out from the magnetic mountain. The natural magnetic great formation seemed to be invisible, which surprised Tianqi. He looked carefully and saw Chen Ang's golden boat of good fortune in front of him. A young Taoist priest was standing on the boat, wearing a feather robe and a star crown. He was smiling at him. The young Taoist smiled and said, "I've done it. I've refined the golden ship to a high level. With your help, I can break the polar magnetic high baleful qi and go to the divine mountain." After this setback, the power of the great fire eye has been greatly reduced. I'm afraid it won't be able to recover its vitality even when the minor Yuan tribulation begins. Tianqi smiled bitterly and asked, "Since you have such power, why do you need me? You can go to the polar magnetic high baleful qi, why do you need me?" Chen Ang shook his head and said, "Of course I need your help, but that's for later. I need to prepare for the trip to the polar magnetic high baleful qi. How about this, 20 years later, I'll go with you to the Copper Coconut Island. What do you think?" What else could Tianqi say? He nodded and agreed. The two of them returned to the cave on Copper Coconut Island. When Lu He saw the two of them returning, a strange expression appeared on his face. He was about to step forward and pay his respects when Chen Ang stopped him with one hand and said, "You and I are fellow Taoists, there's no need to be like this." Lu He forced a smile and said, "Senior and my master are of the same generation, how could Junior dare to be rude?" Chen Ang smiled and said, "Let's just call each other Taoist friends. We're in the same generation as you and your master." Lu He asked again and again, but Chen Ang didn't let him. He agreed and said, "If that's the case, I'll take my leave." When they stepped into Chen Ang's cave, Princess Lingsha came up to welcome them. Chen Ang saw that she was full of magic energy and knew that she had been cultivating diligently for the past 2 months. He was slightly satisfied and casually gave her some pointers on the key points of cultivation, asking her to carefully memorize them. The golden ship of good fortune had improved greatly. Even without the help of Chen Ang's power, it wasn't afraid of the magnetic mountain anymore. They stopped at the port on the island. Chen Ang stayed on the Copper Coconut Island for a few days. Every day, apart from teaching Lingsha's cultivation, he would discuss Tao with Tianqi, practice the magnetic spell, or walk on the beach and enjoy the scenery of the South China Sea. Chen Ang was very respected among the disciples of the Copper Coconut Island. Except for Lu He, No one dared to talk to him as if he was from the same generation. Chapter 480. Chen Ong opened the magical treasure pouch. Sure enough, there was the copper coconut spirit tree wrapped in a clear magical light. There were also more than 100 other kinds of divine woods, which were used by the island's disciples to refine their swords. Tianxiang Novel 2. Chen Ong waved his hand, and a clear light wrapped the spirit trees and sent them into the yellow river of 9 bends formation. He then planted them in the Pearl Palace. He thought for a while, then smiled and said, "How can I repay Tianqi's great gift? I know that he loves these copper coconuts as much as his life. Now that he has given me so many, I'm afraid that he has used up all the copper coconuts on the island for hundreds of years. I don't feel good about it, so I will return the gift with this. I hope that you will not be stingy with this gift and give me some face." Chen Ong pointed his finger, and a coral mirror flew out from his sleeve and landed in Lu He's hand. He had refined many tool embryos in the volcano of Moonchild Island, and this was one of them. It was made of coral, and the divine light of a 1,000-year-old clam in the sea was the mirror. It was elegant, and it shone brightly in Lu He's hand. As the eldest martial brother of Copper Coconut Island, how could Lu He's eyes be compared to those wandering cultivators who cherished a crude treasure as much as their life? However, he could see that this mirror was full of spirit light, and its quality was excellent. Although he had many treasures, none of them could compare to this. If he succeeded in refining it in the future, it would definitely be the best treasure in his hands. He then heard Chen Ong say, "I still have many treasures in my hands, but most of them are made of metal, and they are not suitable for you to refine on Copper Coconut Island. This coral mirror is made of 10,000-year-old blood coral from the sea, and a 1,000-year-old divine clam. It is called Sea-Splitting Mirror, and it is especially good at flying through the sea. The divine light of the mirror can reach you in the blink of an eye, and it has the same effect as the first escape art of the mystic door, spiritual light escape. I will give it to you to refine your demon to protect yourself. You can ask your master for the restriction of metamagnet divine light to refine, it has other uses." Lu He held the coral mirror and listened to Chen Eng's instructions. Suddenly, an idea flashed in his mind and he injected his prime magnetism magic power into the mirror. Immediately, a divine light that was more than 10,000 feet long shot out from the mirror towards the magnetic peak. Lu He saw this and quickly retracted the divine light, but in his panic, the mirror shook and accidentally shone on one of his junior martial brothers. The treasured mirror's divine light retracted and forcefully pulled this junior martial brother over to Lu He's front. He didn't have the slightest strength to resist and could only stare dumbstruck in the divine light. Even his mind was frozen. Lu He tested the power of the mirror and was shocked. He quickly dispersed the divine light. He saw his junior martial brother looking around, and didn't know why he suddenly came here from 10 miles away. Although Lu He was surprised by the power of the coral mirror, he couldn't help but feel happy. He thought, Chern Daoyou's mana is really profound, to be able to give me such a powerful treasure so casually. And the other junior martial brothers still treated the 1,000-year-old copper coconut as a treasure, and didn't want to give it to Chern Daoyou. How would they know that the mystic door has endless treasures? Chern Daoyou's mana is profound, and he easily gave such precious treasures to others. As expected, we, the disciples of Copper Coconut Island, have been associated with the wandering cultivators too much, and have been stingy and short-sighted. He raised his head and looked at the golden light of Chen Eng's golden ship of creation disappearing into the sea, and sighed, in Chern Daoyou's heart, I'm afraid that hundreds or thousands of such treasures are not as important as a trace of Tao. He felt a little sad when he thought of this, but when he thought about it, his primordial spirit rose, and he became more spirited. Chern Daoyou has his own Tao of immortality, but what about me? Even if I have thousands of treasures and countless powerful spells, if I don't achieve immortality, I won't be able to ascend, and I will definitely become a pile of dust and ashes in the future. If I only seek a moment of freedom like before, and don't care about immortality, won't I be wasting the opportunities and efforts of this life? On the waves of copper Coconut Island, Luha silently made a wish to achieve immortality, and suddenly, there was a little more determination in his eyes. He looked at the direction where Chen-Ong left, and there was a change in his body that made people look at him with new eyes. After this farewell, I will never forget my wish to achieve immortality. Luha clapped his hands and sang loudly on the shore, sending Chen-Ong off. A few hundred miles away, Chen-Ong stood on the golden ship and suddenly smiled. He urged the golden ship to go straight to the eye of the South Sea. Chen-Ong was tired of controlling the boat and wanted to devote himself to his research. He handed the golden boat over to Lingsha to control. Firstly, it was to train her to be able to travel the 4 seas and use her mana. Secondly, it was not the job of a disciple to be enslaved. If the master needed something, the disciple would do it for him. Since there was such a useful slave, why would Chen-Ong bother? Chen-Ong was used to using the golden ship, so he didn't notice it until Princess Lingsha received it and compared it to the others. Then he realized the convenience of the golden ship. The situation in the sea was unpredictable, and there were storms, sea beasts, lightning, giant waves, dragons, pirates, and all kinds of dangers. Even the mermaids, who were born to be part of the sea, had to face many dangers, and there was always the risk of going missing or dying. It was not until she piloted the golden ship that Lingsha realized the benefit. Not only was it faster than any other ship, but it also saved her from the suffering of riding sea beasts. Even her dragon whale was troublesome to take care of, so how could it be compared to the golden ship? Furthermore, within 3 feet of the golden light, no storm could enter the ship, and people on the ship would never suffer from the wind and waves. Even in the midst of the storm, the golden ship was as stable as land. If the sea beasts blocked the way, and the pirates robbed them, she only needed to activate the divine thunder on the ship from afar to turn them into charcoal. If she got tired of looking at the surface of the sea, the golden ship could even dive into the water and enjoy the scenery. Chen-Ong opened up a cave in the belly of the golden ship that was about 1,000 miles wide. He took a piece of land from the South China Sea and practiced all kinds of Tao of creation in it. He used the Yellow River of 9 bends to collect a lot of first yuan heavy water in the lungs of the earth. Although it was not as endless as the other 2, it was enough for him to cultivate 1 innate water dharma to the initial level. He let Macho out and asked Lingsha to keep her company while he isolated himself in the cave of the golden ship and practiced the 3 Tao of innate water. 1 drop of first yuan heavy water could turn into thousands of water in the world, and when it melted, it would form a lake. If Chen-Ong splashed a few drops of Tianyi true water on the ground, he would be able to create great rivers like the Yangtze River and the Yellow River. With the Tianyi true water that Chen-Ong had infused with the Tianyi true water, if he had the intention to spread it on the ground, he would have long turned Middle-earth into a swamp country. Other than the barely populated highlands, the people in other places would all be fed to the fishes and turtles. If the Xianming true water in the heavenly river Dharma was used, its power would not be any weaker than the first yuan heavy water, and the consequences would not be any better than the flood formed by the first yuan heavy water. Thousands of miles of ice, billions of lives would be frozen, and a small half of the planet of Shu, which was tens of thousands of times the size of the Ming dynasty, would become a frozen land in the North Pole. If Chen-Ong used all his strength, it would not be difficult to turn the whole world into the Cambrian period. As for the first yuan heavy water, it was the heaviest. A single drop weighed 1 yuan. Furthermore, the greater the amount of true water gathered, the heavier it became. If Chen-Ong turned it into rain and rained it down, the turbid air would surge up and shake the mountains and rivers hundreds of millions of miles away. It would revert back to the turbid air and turn the solidified material state of the Shushan planet back to the primordial Qi state. Chapter 481. Even though the sea was vast and the golden ship was fast, It didn't take long for them to reach the Eye of the South Sea that Chen Ong was looking for. Princess Lingsha was from the sea race and was familiar with the sea. Under her control, the temperature of the sea quickly dropped and the golden ship sailed into a cold sea. Chen Ong leaped onto the sword beam and flew up to the clouds in the sky, looking around. He saw two barren reefs in the distance. One of them was only a few hundred feet above the ground. It was flat and round like a mirror and was a few acres big. As expected, this should be the cold spring of the Eye of the South Sea that Golden-Beard Slave mentioned. The shape of this barren reef is the same as what he said. Back then, he, the two phoenixes, and the three phoenixes met Tiger Head Zen, master of the East Sea's Evil Dragon Island's Long-Wind Cave. He was slaughtering a strange beast in the eye of the sea, the three-star beauty salamander, and took its inner core to refine the essence of the mysterious mother. He was hit by the Heaven-Sky Mountain's young man's godly thunder. At first, when I heard what he said, I didn't think too much. But now that I think about it, there is more to it than meets the eye. The Heaven-Sky Mountain's young man is one of the most powerful itinerant immortals in the sea. It was not a coincidence that Tiger Head Zen Master was punished by him. There must be another reason. I want to open an abode here, but I'm afraid there will be some trouble. Chen Ong sighed and waved his hand. The creation was put back into his sleeve. He took Lingsha with him, and turned into a silver light that landed on the barren reef. The South Sea was located in the extreme south. It was the warmest sea among the four seas. However, there was an extremely cold sea current within 1,000 miles. Even though it nourished countless sea creatures, it made the surrounding climate dry and cold. It was not like the hot and poisonous land in the south. The barren reef was not more than 100 steps wide and could be seen with one glance. Although it was in the eye of the sea, it was not as important as the Purple Cloud Palace's immortal island. If Chen Ong wanted to be like the Purple Cloud Palace, closing the sea eye and leaving only the immortal island as a facade, he would probably have to move mountains and fill seas. Chen Ong opened his sleeves and was about to release the golden ship of fate to escape into the sea. Suddenly, he saw an invisible conveyance light landing on a desolate reef not far away and secretly peeping at him. Chen Ang's Dharma eye saw through her true appearance. It was a woman who looked to be in her late 20s. Looking at her invisible mana, it was quite extraordinary. This woman was hiding on the desolate reef, and she didn't know that Chen Ong had already discovered her. She was cultivating on a deserted island nearby when she suddenly saw a ray of treasure light shooting up from the nearby sea surface. It was like a meteor streaking across the sky, leaving a silver mark on the sea surface. Because she was concerned about an extremely important secret here, she couldn't let it go, so she secretly came to investigate. This person stopped on this desolate reef. It looks like he isn't just passing by. He came here intentionally. Could it be because of that secret as well? 10 years ago, because of a great opportunity, I saw the senior in the eye of the sea spitting out multicolored light and discovered this secret. Ever since I received the teachings of that senior, my mana improved greatly. Since then, I have been cultivating here in seclusion. This eye of the sea is secluded, and no one came here for 10 years. Why are there people coming to disturb me recently? This woman was also from an unorthodox sect. She was originally useless and only had some mixed and weak mana. Although she received some true teachings and her mana improved greatly, seeing that Chen Ang's conveyance light was pure, she knew that she wasn't his match. She was also worried that her family's secret would be discovered, so she suddenly became anxious. She couldn't help but scold, "Those famous sects are really too much. It's hard for us unorthodox sect loose cultivators to cultivate. We had some fortuitous encounters by chance, but they still want to disturb and destroy us. The last time that person came, he almost killed all the 3-star beauties in the vicinity. This time, this person is probably going to ruin my plans." Seeing that she didn't move, Chen Ong thought for a while and felt that there was no need to be so careful. With his cultivation, it was fine even if he was a little rash. He reached out and pointed, and the metamagnet divine light shone on the reef. The surging metamagnet divine light wrapped the entire reef, and with a slight tremble, the female cultivator was pulled over. Princess Lingsha, who was at the side, also felt something, but with her master here, she didn't dare to act rashly. Seeing that the female cultivator was stunned by Chenong, she went up and circulated her Xianming mana. She slapped her body and sealed her mana. At the same time, she used a cold current to wake her up. This female cultivator was different from the many strange races in the various countries across the sea. She looked like someone from Middle-earth. Her lips were tightly shut, and she stared blankly at Chenong. Her breasts rose up and down, and she was a little scared and a little embarrassed from being caught peeping. Chenong smiled faintly and asked, "So it's a fellow Taoist. But why did fellow Taoist peep and violate my taboo?" The female cultivator pondered for a while before she organized her words and calmed the fear in her heart. She said, "Tan Yun doesn't dare to offend fellow Taoist. I accidentally saw fellow Taoist's light, and I didn't want to do such a sneaky thing. It's just that a fellow Taoist came here to secretly kill a strange beast in the sea, 3-star beauties. My own mana needs to borrow the essence of this beast's enigmatic mother in order to merge and improve, so I kept a close eye on it. I was worried that fellow Taoist would have the same intention, so I could only secretly ask around. I hope fellow Taoist can forgive me." Chenong nodded and said, "I see, then I don't blame fellow Taoist for this matter." However, he seemed to be curious and asked, "But does fellow Taoist know the origin of the person who killed the 3-star beauties? Is it also for the essence of that strange beast's inner core, enigmatic mother?" Tan Yun frowned and said doubtfully, "That person's mana is strong and his actions are cruel. How would I dare to meet him? He hid himself under the protection of a senior. I only know that he often lured the beauties out and used his flying sword to kill them. The blood essence and souls of the beauties were all sucked away by him, leaving only dried corpses. Such a terrifying method! His origin must be extraordinary." Chenong thought about the spells that could steal the blood essence and souls of living beings. The most famous one should be the blood god of the blood divine cult. However, after Deng Yin was sealed, this spell did not appear in this world for a long time. Similarly, the mysterious Yin beast gathering banner of the Heaven Lewd cult was also the same. Now that the calamity of a May cult had not arrived, and the evil spirits were still in hiding, it was quite strange that something like this happened. However, other than these famous spells, there were many other demonic spells that could harvest blood essence and souls. As far as Chenong knew, there were no less than 7. Now that he had not seen those corpses, it was difficult to make a judgment. If he really killed with his flying sword and could harvest blood essence and souls, then this Su's origin was probably not simple, and his power was amazing. Chenong saw that Tan Yun's eyes were wandering, and was afraid that she was still hiding something, so he lied to her. "I have heard of this form of death. It seems that the blood god's son Deng Yin, the long-brow spiritual master's junior brother, cultivated the great Azura secret technique Blood God Sutra. When ordinary people and beasts were pounced on by his spell, their blood essence would be sucked dry, and their souls would be imprisoned, never to be reincarnated." Sure enough, after hearing what he said, the female cultivator Tan Yun's body stiffened, and a look of fear appeared on her face. She hurriedly asked, "Is what fellow Taoist said true?" Chenong nodded, and saw that she suddenly bowed to him. He quickly pointed to the void, and an invisible force appeared out of nowhere to support her knees. He only heard her say, "I still hid some things before, please don't blame me, fellow Taoist." The primordial spirit of an itinerant immortal of the East Sea in the past is still trapped in the eye of the sea here. Because he committed a fire tribulation, his corpse was dismembered in this eye of the sea, and he borrowed the power of the cold spring to protect his primordial spirit from being hurt by the Yin fire. However, after the fire tribulation subsided, His primordial spirit was sealed in this cold spring of the eye of the sea. Only during the summer solstice and dragon boat festival every year can he collect the yang qi of heaven and earth to melt some of the 10,000-year-old ice essence that sealed him. Because of some opportunities, I have a half-teacher relationship with this itinerant immortal, and he taught me the heavenly book to practice. Previously, when the demon came to the eye of the sea to kill, I inadvertently took care of him once, and he used a spell to plot against me. Fortunately, there was that senior to help me, and I was spared. However, it allowed him to see a trace of that senior's actual situation. After searching for a few days, he didn't see any trace of us, so he left in a hurry. I thought that he had already given up, but after hearing what fellow Taoists said today, only then did I know that he actually practiced such a vicious spell. He must be after that itinerant immortal senior's primordial spirit, and he will come again in the future. I'm afraid that I won't be able to resist him alone. The next time he comes, he will definitely have a way to break our spell of invisibility. Fellow Taoist, please help me release the senior's primordial spirit, and escort him to reincarnation. In the cold spring, there are a number of magic treasures, Taoist books, and elixirs sealed by the senior when he was alive. I am willing to share a portion with fellow Taoists. Of course, Chen Ong refused to believe all of it. He used the divine light of metamagnet to illuminate the surface of the sea, and the divine light of metamagnet of Een spread out to an area of an acre. It went deep into the sea, and sure enough, he saw some clues. In the cold spring of the eye of the sea, other than a few 3-star beautiful turtles, there was a faint 5-colored light circulating. There were indeed traces of prohibition, but how knowledgeable was Chen Ong? He was not as gullible as the female cultivator Tan Yun.